Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morganroth, along with my co-host, Candy Ebling. Candy, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, Scott?
All right, and leading off is Charlotte Bat CEO Rick Curdy. And Rick, once again, glad to have you on the program.
Thanks, guys. How are you guys doing in Florida?
Oh, we're doing great, thanks. All right, well, Rick, I know you've been bannering on your Facebook page about the XFL, so now you get a little bit of time to talk about it, or a lot of bit of time to talk about it. So I guess the biggest thing that we're going to talk about is how do you think Act 1 was in terms of ratings?
Oh, it was great. I mean, they were like at a 3.5. One of the games was at a 4.0. They're averaging like 17,000 at a game. And the enthusiasm was extremely high. Even people who I've been waiting for this league for the last 2 years, talking about it, and people are looking at me like I'm crazy. And then finally they get to see it, and they're like, wow, you know what? I really liked it. It was much quicker, much faster. They did some little tweaks here and there, and I'm kind of liking it. So overall, week 1 was very, very successful for the XFL.
What stood out in your mind, Rick?
I just been watching a lot of games, and like I said, I've been excited to watch the games, and they did not disappoint. And it was great to see other players who getting second chances is what I like. You know, players that were kind of ignored during the draft because they didn't go to these big schools, and it's great to see them play and get another opportunity. And it's just fun. It's so much better now. It's cleaner, crisper, shorter. The officials are great. They did a great job, and there's a lot of transparency in the league that you don't see in the NFL.
Yeah, well, I think the one thing that the NFL is looking to get out of it is they want to look at that kickoff rule. I know that there's been a lot of talk in the past on how they can clean it up to avoid injuries. And looking at the XFL and how they actually did it, to me, I got to tell you what, it intrigued me. You kept the play in the game, but you had it more structured where there's a lot less contact and potentially more room for longer kickoff returns.
Yeah, definitely. It's all about safety with the XFL, unlike the NFL, who continue to put CTE in the back burner, and that's what I love about the XFL. They know that CTE and head injuries are very common in football, and they said we're going to make the game safer and put fans first. And I love the halo rules, they call it, where when they do the kickoff, that the players don't start running till the guy catches the ball.
Yeah, I like that.
I really like seeing that. And, I knew about all these tweaks that they were going to do, and to finally see it, it's great, and I'm just excited that people are talking about it.
All right, so let's talk about the extra point. They have 3 layers. You have the one at the 2, the one at the 5, and the one at the 10. Obviously, one you can score up to 3 points based off the play. Doesn't look like to me a lot of teams are probably going to go ahead with a 10-yard unless they are actually in a real big hole. What are your thoughts about that rule?
Yeah, I like it. The one thing I hated that was the extra point. It's such a waste of time. In the XFL, they actually had a lot of these focus groups, and they would contact people and say, what would you like to see in football? What would you like not to see? And I said, why can't you just make the touchdown 7 points? Because the extra point is so dumb. It wastes too much time, and 99.9% of the time they kick it in. It's a chip shot, no big deal. And so I guess they realize, you know what, the 2-point conversion, because it's an offensive league, is much better, but let's kind of mix it up. Let's give them 3 opportunities. And it's great because there's a lot of psychology going on when you're coaching a game. So it's like, should I go for the 2 or should I go for the 3? Should I play it safe, go for the 1? So I think it makes it more intriguing.
Yeah, I think the word that I would refer to, based on what you said, is a chess game, Rick. I mean, you got the chess game between coaches. Do I go 1, 2, or 3? And then, of course, I think there's some interesting comparisons, even when you talk about the Canadian Football League, for example. And what I mean by that, Rick, is the Canadian Football League has different scoring tendencies as well. Whether they have, you can actually score a point, like lose 60-1, based on how far and wide that those kicks go. I don't want to get into the level of the Canadian rules, but anytime you have scoring, different ways to score, it certainly adds a degree of intrigue when you turn in terms of strategy.
Yeah, I love Canadian football. It's great. It's so widespread, and that's exactly a lot of the stuff that the XFL has adapted. They got a lot of college in there. They looked at arena football. They looked at CFL. And most importantly, they looked at the fans and asked the fans, what do you want to see? What do you not want to see? What do you like about football? What do you hate about football? So I think hearing the fans and combining a lot of the CFL, arena football, and just making the game safer, and honestly, just putting a lot of common sense into it, it's made it it's made it a great product. When you watch it, it's still football, but then it's got a different layer with the halo rule, with the extra points and things like that. So, like I said, I'm very excited that people have given this league a chance, and I think it's here to stay.
Candy, do you have any observations about what you saw? You had an opportunity to see a little bit of the game on Sunday. We were really busy with other commitments, but we did have a chance to watch it Sunday.
I think for those people that haven't watched it, that we should kind of go over some of the different rules. So you mentioned the kickoff. You mentioned the points after the touchdown. I thought one of the most interesting ones also is the double pass rule.
Yes, it's great. None of that, like a penalty flag thrown for this or penalty flag thrown for that. They're just letting them play football. I mean, there's rules, of course, there's offsides and stuff like that, but they've eliminated a lot of the, a lot of this little nitpicky stuff that the NFL does, where they just throw flags like crazy, and they have to look at, instant replay so much. So they're just letting them play football. Some of the plays I saw, they were kind of like, they were late with hiking the ball, and they just let them play. It's like, all right, they're 1 second late. Who cares? Let's just let them play. And that's the whole concept of the XFL, is to make the games faster. A lot of these NFL games are like 3.5, 4 hours long.
Right.
All these games are like 3 hours long, almost 2 hours and 45 minutes long, and it just makes it go faster and quicker, and it's just a better product. So they're just eliminating a lot of this stuff that a lot of people just really don't care, and a lot of the nitpicky stuff like that, and it's just a lot better.
It's interesting too, Rick, when the XFL was putting their plan together, it almost reminds me in an indirect sense how arenas are built where you try to copy a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this. And the XFL did pretty much the same thing. And you just alluded to it, Rick, moments ago, that if you can take the best out of a lot of things and then make it your own, I think that definitely, to me, is a good sign of, trying to be innovative, but also trying to create the best product possible. And yeah, you're right. You'll eliminate a lot of the ticky-tack fouls. And let me take it a step further, okay? When you talk about the hockey overtime, they're not going to just call every ticky-tack penalty. They have to be outright obvious and dead obvious before you actually penalize somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I hate about the NFL is the catch rule, where he didn't have full control, and they have to show 10, 20 instant replays and all this stuff, and they say, no, it's not a catch according to the NFL. Well, the XFL say, hey, if it looked like a catch, it's a catch. If it looks like a tackle, it's a tackle. It's that old saying, if it looked like a duck, quack like a duck, it's a duck. And that's what I love about it. There none of this, ticky-tacky stuff. It's a catch, good, let's move on. They also have the 1 foot inbound, like they do in college, where the NFL has a 2 foot inbound, so that makes it a lot better too to have the 1 foot inbound. So like I said, they just eliminate all the ticky-tacky, all the dumb stuff that the NFL does, and just condensed it and made it a lot better and a lot faster. And I think that's one thing about the NFL that people get frustrated with, is that they're just so ticky-tacky with all these plays. And, they call it the no fun league for a reason, because it's no fun. They don't let you do anything here. You can celebrate. They're not going to penalize you for, they had a guy who they talked to who dropped the F-bomb, and, so I think that's the one thing they got to look at, is probably a tape delay when they're interviewing these players after a play, which I think gives it an extra layer of football. Whether it's a good play they do or a bad play they do, they go up there and they interview them, which I think is great. I love it.
I also have to add, Rick, there's a couple other quick little things. One, if you're going to go if you're watching NFL games, there's 40-second play clock in between. The XFL only has a 25-second play clock. And for all the women that are out there and that are watching and, I don't understand, they're reviewing this play. I don't understand what they're reviewing or why they're reviewing it. The one thing I really liked is when they go up to the replay and the judge is making a call, the ref that's in the booth, and he rewinds, he shows you the play, he shows you and talks to you and tells you what he's looking for. So whether he's looking for if there was a penalty or if there was a scoring play, okay, did he have control of the ball? Did he make cross the plane? And if he didn't, okay, now I got to go back. Where was he last touched down? Where do I have to put the ball? What time is on the clock? But he is enunciating and telling the listeners what he's looking at, so we know, as opposed to when we're watching an NFL game, they're just saying, the coach challenged this part of the play.
Yeah,
that's all we know.
There's no transparency in the NFL. It's like they kind of want to hide things from the fans, And this is what I love about the XFL is that there's so much transparency. How many times do you go to a booth and you see them? Not only do you see it, but you hear them because they're all mic'd up and they're saying, "This is what I'm looking for." It simplifies the game much quicker, especially when the coaches are calling their plays. They're calling like scat 2249 bubble whatever, and a lot of people are like, "What is that?" It's coded word, it's coded language, and I love the announcers, especially Greg Olson did a sensational job commenting on the game where he said, "Okay, what he's saying is he's doing a screen." It's all it is a simple screen pass. Okay, that's what I love about it is that they explain the terminology, what it is, what it's about, and it just people who don't watch the NFL or don't understand are like, "Oh, okay, I'm understanding it now." Where in the NFL, they you don't hear that, you don't see that. Maybe at a Pro Bowl they do that, which nobody watches. But every XFL game has the where they're mic'd up, and even the officials, they make a mistake. We made a mistake. We apologize, and I think that's why people like it so much.
Well, you brought up a couple interesting points, so let me just take one at a time, okay, Rick? First of all, I like the idea that we can actually hear the play called from the coach, because that gives fans a different idea of what really goes involved in terms of what you do to call a play and how you disguise these calls. Because the average fan doesn't know anything about it. Whether they understand the nature of the play or the call, it's about trying to gather terminology is really what it's about to do. And as a result, that's something that they normally don't get to do. And I thought it was neat. Now, I got to tell you, as I was watching a Golick and Wingo with Cardell Jones that Mike Golick was asking Cardell, do you like it when the coaches are talking in your ear all the way up and that you feel like you're being micromanaged to the very second? And Cardell was telling Pep Hamilton, well, you don't really have to go that far because you want to still take away the human element. So do I think that that's maybe something they can, adjust a little bit? Maybe, but you know what? Again, this is the XFL, so these guys are in this reason because they're trying to really be developmental and trying to learn the game a little. So I can understand both sides about talking too much to a quarterback in his ear because you still want to be able to trust your signal caller to some degree, yet some of them need to be coached up a lot more. So that was just a unique thing that I noticed over the weekend.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one thing they're probably going to have to clean up a little bit, and they'll do it. Like I said, they listen to the fans. They send surveys out. I actually get one, and they say, what do you like about it? What do you not like about it? And they listen to the fans, which is great. The NFL, not only don't listen to their fans, they don't care about their fans because it's all about money, and ratings for them. As long as they got all that, they can care less. But with the XFL is that they listen to their fans, they do questionnaires, and if there's something there that needs improving, they'll improve it. And that's probably one thing they'll improve is something like that, or probably when they talk to the players after the game, after a play, and in case somebody curses, or probably have like a time delay on it or something like that. But I mean, just little things like that. But overall, the product is better. It's intriguing, and it's like watching a chess game when you hear the the head coaches call the plays out. That was the favorite part that I liked, was them calling their plays out, and it really is like a chess match. Who's gonna go, who's gonna do this, who's gonna do that, and then I love it when they switch the plays and it's a fake play, and so it's so complex, and a lot of people always think that football's easy. It really isn't. It's a very difficult sport, and it's amazing how they get all these plays in a short amount of time, and how they change it really quick, and it's just I think it gives a different perspective of the game of professional football.
Let's talk about the games. I know that they were in the 3-hour range, where NFL games are a little bit longer. To me, a football game is going to be 3 hours no matter what anyways. So I'm wondering, did you notice as much of a difference for the time of the game here than you did with the NFL?
Oh, absolutely. There was no in the NFL, you see players just walking around with their hands on their hips and take their helmets off, and a lot of downtime. And the XFL didn't have that. It was boom, 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 boom. And that's the one thing they're trying to get rid of, is all this downtime and all this waiting. Unless it's an injury and it's a serious injury, that's understandable. But when they're reviewing plays or they're looking at something, there's no downtime, and it just happens so quick, and that's the pace was so much better, so much quicker, and all of a sudden you look up and like, wow, it's already the third quarter, or it's already halftime. And that's another element I like. They have 10-minute halftimes, which is great, and they go inside the locker rooms and you can hear like their speech. So it's kind of like a behind the scenes of professional football, where the NFL doesn't want to go there. They don't want their fans see all that. Here the XFL is like, we want you to see what we're doing. We want you to see. And, when they don't play good, you got to hear they make no excuses. So that's one thing I liked about it, is that it's so much quicker.
Okay, let's talk about the attendance. I know that we were around the 17,000 mark, didn't quite hit 18,000. More curiosity. Still 4 cities that haven't hosted a game as of yet, though it'll probably change a little this week and into the following week. So what do you expect in terms of attendance, Rick, over the next couple of weeks as each of these teams get ready for their inaugural game in their markets? I think one city that I'm intrigued from an attendance standpoint is really St. Louis.
Yeah, St. Louis, what I've been seeing is that they're reportedly going to get 25 to 30,000 at the game. And right now they're leading all XFL in merchandise, which is not a surprise because they lost two NFL teams, and they're starving for football. And I know St. Louis is a baseball Cardinals city, but they love professional football. They supported their Cardinals. They supported their Rams. And unfortunately, both owners just packed up and took off. And they miss football. They love football. And not a surprise that they're leading all in merchandise. And they'll probably lead the XFL in attendance. So I see the attendance going up because I think a lot more people gave it a chance. I think there are people that are like, oh, I don't want to see this. This is stupid. This is dumb. This is weak. These players, I don't even know who they are. It's like minor league football. It's going to be terrible. And I think a lot of people were impressed about how good the games were, how good the players are. And a lot of these players are like, wow, I remember him. He was a backup. He's really, really good. Like, how did they miss that guy? Or like Philip Walker of the Houston Roughnecks, who people are like, how in the world did this guy slip through the hands of the Colts? He was amazing. And I know it's just one game, but a lot of these players haven't played in years or months or something like that, and you saw some drop passes or stuff like that, but most of all, the game was a lot crisper and a lot quicker. So I think the attendance will go up, and I think a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of curiosity has really brought a lot of these naysayers out and are going to give the league a chance.
Well, Rick, don't lose sight of the fact that the St. Louis Blues have been one of the original sports teams there. I know the Cardinals have been there longer, but the St. Louis Blues have a really good following there. Many years ago, I saw a game over there, but they've been around a long time. I was glad to see that they won a Stanley Cup after a lot of years waiting for it. So, I think St. Louis is a much better sports town than most people want to give it. The only reason the Cardinals left in the first place was Bidwell didn't get a new stadium. The second stadium, Kroenke, I think, was just on a mission to take the team over to L.A., and he saw a gold mine of cash.
Hollywood.
Right, yeah. So I think, but regardless, having a 10-week football with potential play out there, I think I'm really happy that St. Louis got one of the teams. I certainly love to see San Diego get one in the coming years or two. I know they tried with the AAF, but that didn't work out. But give it a solid league, and I think down the road we'll find out in terms of what expansion cities are ahead. So with that said, Rick, we talk about the attendance. Let's talk about TV ratings. I know 3.3 million looked, and I know they got as high as 4 million on ABC, and then you're talking about the late game. So why don't you comment about what your initial impressions were about the TV ratings? So I think that's something that'll be intriguing over the next several weeks.
Well, the TV ratings were really good. I'm not really surprised because I think a lot of people watched it for curiosity, and a lot of people missed football because there's that big football withdrawal. Actually, the game that was highest was actually the Guardians and Tampa game, and I thought that was the worst game because it was so one-sided, and Tampa looked so bad and the Guardians looked so good, especially with their defense. I actually was at a 4. The game that dipped a little bit was actually the St. Louis and Dallas Renegades game, but that had a lot to do with the Academy Awards on at that time, which have monster ratings. So that's what kind of made that a little lower, but it was still solid. So overall, they were like at 3.5, as high as a 4 million. So, and I think in the second week it's going to be higher because I think people are really saying, you know what, this is a real legit league. We've seen, people want to compare us to the AAF. The AAF was a money pit. Charlie Ebersol's an idiot. He didn't know what he was doing. He got too many small market teams like in Salt Lake and Birmingham and all this stuff, and the TV deals, the Bleacher Report was an absolute joke. And I mean, he couldn't even pay his players, and the league didn't even last the whole season. Vince McMahon took 2 years to develop this. He knew what mistakes he made the first time in 2001, and it's just a lot better. And you can tell they put a lot of thought into this. It's not rushed in there. They really thought this over. They thought the city's over. I actually thought that the cities they picked were just too big, but it's actually a great idea because it's always good to have a team in New York, Los Angeles. You definitely have a team in St. Louis. So overall, it's great, and I think the ratings and the enthusiasm showed.
Well, I think the reason why that New York had high ratings were the number one media market in the country, Rick. And let's not forget the fact that New York has always been able to go ahead and draw ratings for other sports in the past. I remember many, many years ago when you had the North American Soccer League, the Cosmos were a heck of a draw. And also in the USFL, the New Jersey Generals were pretty good too. So I don't think there's any doubt New York was a great market. L.A., you got to have that. 2 of the biggest cities in Texas. And, of course, Tampa gives you the Florida presence in St. Louis. So I know I'm probably missing a team or two in D.C. You got one there. So I think they did a good job selecting the markets overall. And let's not kid yourself. You alluded to it moments ago, Rick. Vince McMahon went ahead and invested $500 million out of his own over a 3-year period. So you're right. So you had to plan it better. And as long as you take away the gimmick stuff like the wrestling thing out of there and you keep it hard-nosed football, with Oliver Luck doing a pretty good job running the whole thing and surrounding yourself with a bunch of credible coaches, then certainly your margin of success is a lot greater the more football people that you have around you. Not losing sight of what the game is supposed to be about, Rick, but also, again, he doesn't mind being a developmental league as long as the profit margins ultimately become what they are. Because let's not kid yourself. In real estate, if you can start up with something and invest you never know if you can get a return on investment down the road. And we all both know being in business that you certainly want to go out there and hope that you not only get a return on investment, but you're in early on so that the investment really ultimately pays off down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great thing that they took 2 years and it wasn't gimmicky at all. The first time, Vince McMahon was there. He was always there. And then you had The Rock and the He Hate Me and the silly nicknames and all that stuff. It was just too gimmicky.
Right.
And he just said, you know what? The only thing that we're keeping is the name because we like the name. It's a cool name. That's why they kept the name.
Right.
And so, but he said it's going to be totally different markets, totally different. Everything is going to be all brand new, and this is going to be just better football, quicker football, and we're putting the fans first is the way he saw it. And having Oliver Luck, that brought instant credibility. Getting Bob Stoops out of retirement brought more credibility, and you got great coaches like June Jones. You got Pep Hamilton, just solid coaches right there, and a lot of you have Dean Blandino ahead of the officiating, and you have players like Cardell Jones and Aaron Murray and Connor Cook for the Roughnecks. So you look at it overall, and it's like, you know what, this is pretty good. It brought a lot of legit. Made the league more credible than before.
Yeah, well, there's no question about it. You said a mouthful there, Rick. When you start to go ahead and take the XFL and rebrand it, it's one thing you had it. There's no reason why you can't bring it back and just try to change it all the way around to make it credible. And you have mentioned Cardell Jones. I'll tell you what, Cardell Jones, has a good year, and there's no question that a lot of teams that need a quarterback might give him another look. Didn't you say that there was a throw-in Samoan for St. Louis? Do you want to go ahead and mention them? I have to mention that. That was such a great name, Rick.
I'm gonna mess up his name, but his last name is Tiamalu. I think that's how you pronounce it. But his nickname is the throw-in Samoan. And this guy is great. He's a quarterback for the Battlehawks of St. Louis, and that was an impressive game. To play in Dallas, which is like Texas, they breathe football. And you have Bob Stoops, one of the greatest legendary college coaches there. And you have a baseball stadium that is now a football stadium, which gives it more intrigue. Man, he was so good. He was so poised. He was so calm in the pocket. And the guy can run. And I know there's scouts out there scratching their heads like, how in the world did we miss this guy? This guy's great. So that's his nickname, is the Throwing Samoan, which I think is one of the best nicknames in all of sports. I love it, and it's just fun. That's what I love about it. There was no fun in the NFL, and there's so much fun here, and it's just better. So they look. St. Louis looks great, and like I said, I think they're going to lead the league in attendance.
Well,
see what happens
Rick, you brought up an interesting point, and I'm glad you did. I'm glad that they were able to take the former Texas Rangers ballpark and turn it into an XFL field, because I really have been one of those types of individuals that hate seeing a 30-year-old stadium or less get torn down. And I have been to the Arlington area before when I took a ride out to that very field, although I never saw a game there. And it was neat that there's so much land that they ultimately built. Jerry's Place, and now they have that field, and now they also have the Rangers ballpark, the new place. So, yeah, you know what? I really hate it when money's thrown away. You're tearing down buildings that are under 30 years. I'm glad that Atlanta got it right when they took Turner Field and turned that into Georgia State University. It really kills me inside that the Palace of Auburn Hills is going to be torn down inside of 30 years, even though they moved to Detroit. So you brought up an interesting point there. I think the one thing I was really impressed as we get ready to wrap the segment up, and then you'll have an opportunity to promote your brand a little, is the fact that they've got quality broadcast partners. You got ABC, you got ESPN, and Fox. You can't do any better. And Greg Olson had a very good first act, and I think that even Greg McElroy as well. So who knows, maybe you might find the next Monday Night Football broadcaster out of it. Maybe you won't. But with that said, there's a lot of positive developments that happen within everything we just talked about.
Absolutely. That brought more instant credibility when you heard ESPN, ABC, and, we're part of it. Fox were part of it. And you have, like, announcers that you're so used to seeing in either the NFL or college. You have Greg McElroy, you have Brock Heward, seeing Steve Levy, and even they were just kind of wow, look at this. I mean, they were impressed, and they were intrigued and everything. So, like I said, it just brings instant credibility. You don't see the wrestlers, or you don't see The Rock interviewing anybody, and you're like, get out of here, this is ridiculous. You see Steve Levy, Brock Heward, Greg Olson, Kurt Menefee, just very solid, well-respected announcers. And then what brings it more credibility is having Oliver Luck, who I think was the best hire in all of sports when Vince McMahon hired him as commissioner. He brings credibility. He's going to be honest with you. He's straightforward. He brings passion. He brings knowledge, unlike the other guy in the NFL. So that's what I love about it.
Well, you had some good sideline reporters on hand, that interacted with the players. We'll talk about that in another broadcast. So got another minute and a half or so to go. So really the floor is yours, Rick, in terms of what you want to promote. Go ahead.
Well, I want to thank everybody for supporting our cause. If people don't know, I'm the founder and CEO of the Charlotte Bats, and we're a grassroots organization to bring Major League Baseball to Charlotte. Major League Baseball is looking to expand, and the great thing is that Charlotte's on this list of 6 cities. So if you want to contact me or have any questions or want to get involved, you can email me at charlottebatsbaseball@gmail.com. You can check out our website at www.charlottebats.com. We're also on Twitter at Charlotte Bats Baseball, and we're also on Instagram at Charlotte Bats. Drop me a line and tell me how you'd like to get involved, and hope to hear from you guys.
Also, you have a Twitter. Why don't you let that go as well? Mention that on.
Yeah, we're also on Twitter at Charlotte Bats Baseball, and like I said, I'm on there all the time. And if you have any questions or want to get involved or want to know, hey, how'd you come up with that name or anything, just let me know, and hope to get you involved and see what we can do. And our overall goal is to bring a Major League Baseball team in Charlotte. We got everything else. We're also getting Major League Soccer in 2021, and so Charlotte is a great city for professional sports, and it's time we get Major League Baseball to our city.
Well, not only that, why don't you go ahead and talk about Instagram? A lot of people have that. I don't use that as much as I use the other ones, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm also on Instagram at Charlotte Bats, and I also have a personal account at R. Curdy. So, like I said, I have 2 accounts on there, so you can reach me on either one. And like I said, just drop me a line, drop me a message, and tell me how you'd like to get involved.
All right, Rick, well done tonight. Appreciate your insights on the XFL, and we'll bring you back on the Sports Exchange on Thursday as well. So have a good night, Rick. Appreciate what you did tonight. All right?
Thank you, guys.
You bet.
Thanks,
You're
Rick.
welcome.
Thanks.
So, anyways, Candy, what are your observations about what Rick had to say about the XFL?
I mean, I thought it was a good product. I thought it was interesting, though. I mean, I think in its first go-around that the first week was good, so it'll be interesting to see if it can sustain. I thought it was interesting. There were people that were saying that they were subpar players, though, on the field, because the best of the best are going to go into the NFL, because that's where more money is to be made. But the XFL is the next tier, and I thought, like I said, it was interesting. It was interesting with how mic'd everybody was, so you could hear some of the thoughts, the plays, what was going on, the refs. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in week 2 and week 3.
Yeah, I think what'll be more interesting about the whole thing, Candy, is when you see the first games in these other cities that haven't hosted one yet. And I think the one thing that they've got going for them is that they are able to benefit by ticket sales off of the momentum from week 1. And the question is can that energy sustain itself over 10 weeks? I believe it can, as long as they stay to the game plan, they don't get impatient, and they continue to stick to the brand of football that they're going to get. And again, we all know that there's the unknown variable involved. We both know that. So, any breaking NFL news that you want to mention?
Yeah, the Jags did go ahead, and the Jags have hired. I had it just a minute ago.
Ben McAdoo is the quarterback's coach.
The Jags are hiring ex-Giants head coach McAdoo as their quarterback's coach.
So the Jaguars are definitely trying to bolster their offense, their coaching staff. I know that McAdoo should help out quite a bit. I know last year we spent a lot of time up in Jacksonville, and you have Gardner Minshew and you have Nick Foles. It remains to be seen which one of these guys is actually going to go ahead and come away with the starting job. I know that they made another offensive coordinator hire. I'm trying to remember who it was earlier, but let's not kid ourselves, Candy. Doug Marrone and Dave Colwell under a lot of fire. They are. And they need to get it right. And I think when David Levin comes on, we'll talk about the Jaguars situation because he's going to talk about the Jaguars' connections in the league. So you have a lot of desperate football teams out there where you have coaches on the hot seat. I know back in Detroit that Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn are certainly under fire since they regressed so bad, 3-12-1 in Detroit. So
I think most NFL coaches are on the hot seat unless you're winning like crazy. It's a hotter seat, and I think there's a shorter leash than there was in the past. And the hire that you were thinking about was Jay Gruden as their offensive coordinator.
There you go. Thank you, Candy. Yeah, it was Jay Gruden. So it'll be interesting how you have Jay Gruden as your offensive coordinator with Ben McAdoo. I think that offense got a real good boost with those two hirings. Will Doug Marrone be able to take advantage of those offensive minds? Time will tell. Will Nick Foles be worth the $88 million that they have invested in him, or will Gardner Minshew be the guy that emerges? So there'll be some interesting battles that'll take place later on, and we'll be able to find out what the pulse of everything is. So
the Los Angeles Chargers GM said less than an hour ago that they announced, obviously on Monday, that Phillip Rivers will enter free agency after 16 years with the club. They said it's too early to eliminate any options, but we do like our internal options right now, which pretty much kind of leads you to Tyrod Taylor.
Tyrod Taylor, right.
They also have Easton Stick, but Taylor has actually played for them for a while. So
was there last year. I think Anthony Lynn is the coach for the Chargers, and I believe he was with the Bills. So you can see where the Buffalo connection takes place. It'll be interesting to see what direction the Chargers go in free agency. Are they going to bring on a guy like Marcus Mariota, Candy, who is a low-risk free agent? I mean, free agency is not that far away, Can.
I know, but if they like their internal options, I don't think they're going to go out and get someone that Marcus is going to require some money. He's not going to come cheap.
Well, the Chargers draft high enough so they can certainly draft a quarterback, and he can sit under Tyrod Taylor, which, that's always a possibility when you have a guy like him who actually goes ahead and transitions real well. We've seen it how many times over.
And the other team that's questionable with their quarterback right now are the Panthers. They want clarity on Newton's health before they decide the future.
Yeah, I can see Newton getting a one-year deal. I don't know whether they cut salary or whether or not they release him. And you should. You got a lot of money tied up into that position. What we found out, though, was the backup quarterback wasn't the answer either, that they had to go 2 and 3 deep at that position.
Well, Newton actually has one season left on his current contract. So the Panthers could save $19 million against the salary cap by trading or releasing him. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, since he's kind of been injury-prone lately.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, 1 minute. But he's the type of quarterback that leaves himself wide open to get hammered. And I've always said a lot of these mobile quarterbacks are great when they're playmakers, when they extend the play. But when you take a beating like a lot of these guys do, then you kind of wonder a little bit more, in terms of how long they can sustain themselves. That's for sure.
I agree. So where do you think Phillip Rivers will land?
Gosh, you know what, Candy? I'm hearing stories in Tampa and Indianapolis is another possibility. The Colts aren't happy with Jacoby Brissett. They think they could do better. But my gut feeling is if I were going to go ahead and venture a wager, go Tampa. Phillip Rivers bought a place in Florida, moved his family from San Diego to Florida. Maybe he does, is it because there's no state income tax? I don't know. But it is a lot less money to live in Florida than there is California. And San Diego is definitely the high rent district, and nobody's going to go to L.A.
You think this might be a stretch? What do you think about Jacksonville?
No, not yet. If this were a year later, it's one thing.
They could trade Foles.
They could, but I'm not sure how many teams would take on his salary yet. And I think you have to give the Foles-Minshew thing another year to materialize. And another thing that Doug Marrone will definitely be doing this preseason is he's not going to protect Foles in the preseason. He's going to have to get him as many reps as he can. He tried to protect him last year, got hurt in week one. You went to Minshew, and Minshew got all the reps during the preseason, and as a result, he actually performed admirably, I think winning 4 or 5 games. I think he won 5 games for the Jaguars. So, again, I don't see Jacksonville drafting another quarterback, and I think that you have to give the dynamics of Ben McAdoo and Jay Gruden an opportunity to work with these quarterbacks before you go into a third year. But those are fair questions.
Tennessee Titans?
Well, that's a different story. For what? For them to...
Rivers.
Yeah, well, there's another one. Yeah, it's true. But a lot of that, too, Candy, though, depends on Ryan Tannehill. Is Ryan Tannehill going to re-up with the Titans?
He's a free agent.
Well, he does. How many people want to go ahead and view Ryan Tannehill as a product of the system since his durability issues in Miami were part of the reasons that he left Southern Florida? He got a change of scenery, and he also was able to benefit by Derrick Henry having a outstanding running back in Henry.
I understand. Carolina Panthers are out there as well.
Well, that's true.
And, of course, the Colts.
That's true. So, again, as we talk about the NFL here, any other developments?
Not right now yet.
All right, our next guest is former Los Angeles Rams running back Mel Farr. Mel, thanks for being on the Sports Exchange. Glad to have you.
Hey, my pleasure. How are you guys doing today?
Doing real well. You're on with myself and Candy Ebling.
Hi, Mel.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Mel. I'm going to give you the rock and tell me what happened to Pepper Johnson. Pepper didn't last 1 week, and we have 10. Is there that much impatience in this league where you're going to get rid of a coach after one game, albeit they lost 37-17, but still, I don't know. That, to me, is pretty bizarre.
Yeah, and I guess they gave a 4 passing touchdowns. It's kind of unusual to me, especially given the fact that Winston is a defensive coach as well. And if there's something that he didn't like on the defensive side of the ball, I figured that he and Pepper could get together and try to figure it out. I mean, Pepper, he's been coaching for a while. He started out with the Patriots, and I think he went to the Jets, and had a few other stops. He was in the AAF, I know that. And then he ended up over here in Los Angeles. So, yeah, I saw that. That was kind of surprising after one game to fire him. I was very surprised.
Yeah, that makes 2 of us. I mean, I understand, maybe a few games, but one, to me, I've heard of one and dones, but this is the one and done that I ever saw coming.
Yeah, there has to be, there must be more to it than just that. It had to be something, they've been in training camp, I guess, since maybe like December or something like that. These guys have been together, so they're obviously there must be a difference in philosophy, personalities, or something, because that just doesn't make sense after one ball game to fire a guy. That's really not enough time to evaluate someone.
How many games are in the league? How many games make up the league, though?
That's a great question. I don't know. How many games are
there? Got 10. Got 10. Yeah, that's what makes this thing, Mel, so bizarre, is I could see a change like this happening in week 3 or 4 or 5, but in a 10-game schedule, I don't understand math. Is there some analytics out there where I took a dumb pill overnight to try to figure out the logistics of this firing this early in the process?
And maybe Pepper was over his head as a defensive coordinator. In his history, I don't see where he had been a defensive coordinator at any of his other stops. With the Patriots, he was the linebacker coach. When he went to the Jets, he was a defensive line coach. Or he was somewhere else, I think the Bills or something like that. I think he's a defensive line coach as well. He was a linebacker when he played with the Giants and won two Super Bowls, and then won 3 Super Bowls as a coach. So he's always been a positional coach, and maybe this was just a little bit too much for him. I don't know.
All right, let's just talk about some hypotheticals, Mel, and that being this. The XFL uses a 25-second play clock compared to the NFL's 40-second. What are your thoughts about reducing 15 seconds off the play clock?
I think they're trying to eliminate a lot of the downtime, obviously. So, with a shorter play clock, you're going to get more plays. So just trying to keep the action going, I think, is what they're trying to do. And unfortunately, I did not get a chance to watch any of the football, but I have listened to some people talk about the football that was played, and they actually enjoyed it. There's a lot of things about the game that they liked. In particular, the kickoff they liked. They liked replay, how that was, and also being able to hear the communication between the coach and the quarterback. And it looks like, I'm not certain, but it looks like everybody's mic'd up. Everybody can hear the play that's being called in. Everybody on the team, including the offensive linemen, so there's no relaying of the calls to the line or the wide receivers. Because I did get a chance to watch maybe like 5 minutes of it. And what I saw, it looks like everybody can hear the play that's coming in. So I heard a lot of good things. I did hear a lot of good things listening to the to sports radio and what they were saying about it. Obviously, you don't know a lot of these guys. Some of the quarterbacks that are out there. Some of the other people you don't know, but the football, everybody said was good. So I'm looking forward to taking a peek at it this weekend. Unfortunately, I was out of town this past weekend, so I didn't get a chance to watch it. But I'm looking forward to taking a look at it this weekend.
All right, well, that's fine. I mean, so here's another question for you, Mel. You're a player, and you have the coach talking in your headset for the entire time leading up to the play. Is that good or bad?
From what I saw, he was, I saw, there was some communication, but talking to it seemed like he was repeating the play over and over and over again to make sure that the players could hear the play. Now, I don't know, like I said, I didn't get a chance to watch enough of it to see what other kind of communication was going on between the coach and the players. But I don't think it's a problem. Usually, the coach on the sideline really can't see a whole lot. It's a different vantage point. Somebody in the box would have a better vantage point to take a look and see what the defense is doing to be able to change a play. And the quarterback obviously is going to have a better look at it than the coach on the sideline as well, as far as what the defense is doing. So I don't know if there's a lot of checking at the line from the coach on the sideline, because again, I didn't get a chance to watch it. But I don't think that it's too much of a problem, because when we go through camp, we're kind of trained that when you go to the line of scrimmage, the first thing you want to do is look at the defense, and then you watch how it moves. And because of the game plan, you kind of know that if a defense adjusts and does something, you know what the call is going to be. You know what the adjustment is going to be, what the check is going to be. So I don't think it's that big of a deal.
So, all right, so if you don't feel it's that big of a deal, then when you look at other aspects of replay, do you like the fact that the replay process is conveyed to the fans so that everybody can see the transparency of how it's actually done?
Yeah, that's what the sports pundits were talking about, that they really liked, is that it was transparent, and you knew exactly what it was that they were looking at. So I think that, obviously that's something good. In the NFL, they try to protect everything, play calling, all that stuff. I don't think that we'll ever have a coach and a quarterback mic'd up where you can hear the communication. I just don't think that's ever going to happen. The replay, I think they could adopt that replay. I think they probably will adopt the kickoff, because kickoff they were talking about eliminating the kickoff. Now the XFL is showing a way where you can still have the kickoff in the game, and I think that the NFL should also look at the extra point as well. I heard good things about how the XFL is doing, what they're doing with with the extra point. I think they're on a 3 and I don't know, 1 or 2 and a 3 point extra point, I think is what it is. I think that the NFL should look at that as well, having more options for the extra point.
Good points, Mel, because now the NFL can go ahead and see these plays in live game action and formulate an opinion for themselves on how these are. So, I mean, obviously we know the extra point is a 2 point at the 2 yard line. You get the 1, and then you obviously get 2 points at the 5, and then 3 points if you go from the 10. And obviously, you being a former player understand the dynamics that a short screen pass with a pretty decent passing game gets you that 3 points. So I guess I'd be curious to see how many times they'll be at the 10-yard line, depending on how far back these teams are.
Yeah, well, it seems like it's an easy play, but because the field is condensed, it's also easier for the defense to defend as well, because you don't have as much ground to just worry about covering. So it's still a risky, it's still risky. But I'd like to see how it all plays out throughout the course of the year.
Yeah, Mel, we're so used to the 7, 14, 21, but knowing we may be seeing a lot of 6s, can you imagine what some of these scores are going to end up turning out to be, ones that we're not all too familiar with in the NFL and college?
Right, and that's exciting. Something different, something we haven't seen before. And, I think that makes it exciting. It doesn't have to be just like NFL. I think that's exciting about it. I think they spent a lot of time carefully evaluating what works well in the NFL, what could be done better, and how they can differentiate themselves from the NFL as well. Keep the fan interested.
When we haven't reached that point, but I know when the XFL does get to the shootout, because I know they're probably going to try to do something similar to hockey. Can you imagine what that's going to look like?
Yeah, it's going to be good. It's going to be fun to watch. I think it's going to be fun to watch. I think the overtime rules that we have right now in the NFL. Obviously we gotten away from sudden death, but it is sort of sudden death if one team does score a touchdown. It becomes sudden death, but if the team kicks a field goal, then the other team has an opportunity to get a possession. And we saw this happen last year in the playoffs when New England played Kansas City. Unfortunately, Kansas City had that penalty and the guy went offside. The game goes into overtime. And, Patrick Mahomes never had another opportunity to get back in the game once they got in overtime, because New England won the coin toss, got the ball, drove down the field, scored a touchdown, and it was game over.
Well, one thing I do like about the XFL is the fact that you only have the 1 foot in bounds rule. So, I think that's one thing that they took from college that actually is pretty good. And obviously, I don't think that the XFL is going to call some of these ticky-tack penalties, which will slow the game down. Some observations about a couple of those.
Well, I think that the 1 foot in bounds rule is good, because really that's a player safety rule to me. When the guy is trying to keep 2 feet in bounds, then how is he going to fall? He's going to fall in a way in which he can get hurt. You're going to have to fall on your shoulder, on your back, and fall on your back. There's a possibility if you hit the ground. The 1 foot in, really, to me, is a player safety rule. You can have an opportunity to stay in bounds and also maintain your balance, or fall in such a way where you're not going to hit the ground so hard. When you have to keep both feet in bounds, you hit the ground hard, and then not able to brace yourself, because you got to hold on to the ball all the way through the ground to ensure that it's a catch. So I think the 1 foot in bounds, I think that's a good rule. It's easier too on the officials.
Mel, it never dawned on me that it was a good safety related until you brought it up in the manner that you did. But yeah, I'll give you that. I know you haven't been on the program since the conclusion of the Super Bowl, so why don't you go ahead and tell me what your thoughts of the Kansas City Chiefs beating the 49ers?
Well, when we talked about it before, I saw a lot of ways in which San Francisco could win the ball game, and only one way in which Kansas City could win. And for the first three quarters, Pat Mahomes was terrible. He played terrible. And then the fourth quarter, they were still down, and then it looked like they just turned him loose, let him be Patrick Mahomes. And once they did that, it was game over. It's crazy that really San Francisco. At the end of the game, halftime was a draw. So basically, the first half didn't even matter. They went in halftime, it was tied up, and come back out. San Francisco looked like we're dominating. You see the ebbs and the flows in the game that we talked about. One time, you look up there in the box, John Lynch is up there celebrating, and he's already really getting his ring finger size for a Super Bowl ring. And the next thing you know, the whole game changes. The thing turned around. Because what were they up, 21-10 or something like that? 27.
Well, they were up.
The score was?
Yeah, they were up by a favorable amount. Then all of a sudden, it looked like San Francisco started to unravel. Right.
I told my buddy, when he threw that second interception, I said, this game is over.
Right.
Because I figured that they would just run the ball, and because they were running the ball extremely well, and run the clock out. But I said that if you put it in Jimmy Garoppolo's hand, I said that he's going to throw some up there, and Jimmy Garoppolo does not like to get hit. If you look at it, he does not like to get hit. He does not like to stand in that pocket. If the pocket's not clean for him, he has a very difficult time. And the one thing that Kansas City did do is they rattled him. They got in his face. The defensive lineman batted down a couple balls that Garoppolo was trying to throw. So that defense did a very good job in the third and fourth quarters. In the third quarter, try to keep it close so they would have a chance in the fourth quarter. And all of a sudden, the fourth quarter came around, and that game just changed. It was unbelievable.
Mel, do you think part of that change was the experience between the head coaches?
I think that once again, I think that San Francisco, I think that Shanahan was he was always trying to be the smartest guy in the room. And obviously there were some plays that he called that didn't work because he didn't have the people in there to execute it. When they threw the deep ball down to the receiver, I can't remember who the receiver was, and Garoppolo just threw it out there and overthrew him. And the guy was open, but Garoppolo overthrew it. And that's a big play.
Right.
Because those are points that you don't get. So I really think that Shanahan, he just he cost them the ball game because all he had to do was run the football. They were averaging 6 yards a carry, but he always wants to be the smartest guy in the room. Like, I drew up this great play. The guy was wide open. We just didn't execute. Well, that wasn't necessary.
Yeah, he went away. He went away from
6 yards to crack. Huh?
He went away from what got them the lead.
Absolutely. The last game before this game, Garoppolo threw the ball 9 times.
Right. They beat my Packers with how many? Like you said, 8 balls. I think he threw all of the Packers game. They ran all over us.
I think he's thrown less than 20 in the playoffs. The whole playoffs. I think he's thrown less than 20 balls. Why would you go away from that? Especially when they were averaging 6 yards a carry in the Super Bowl. It just doesn't make any sense. He always wants to be the smartest guy in the room, and he didn't have to be. He didn't have to be. All he had to do is just do what he had been doing. I think he was a little arrogant, and that's what cost him the Super Bowl here in Atlanta, and that's what cost him the Super Bowl this time, when they played Kansas City.
Right.
That's what cost him the Super Bowl.
Well, I guess when you look at the game in general, you think about the fact that Kansas City brought in Steve Spagnuolo, a proven defensive coordinator. The Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, got a ring. Terrell Suggs came in at the end, wanted to go to Baltimore, got talked into KC. Wonder how that worked out. But I guess when you look at the ultimate feel-good story as we wrap up the segment, Mal, Andy Reid finally has a ring, and I know he has, after 222 wins and a close opportunity in Jacksonville, now Andy Reid can now put himself in the Hank Stram category with a championship ring. Good feel-good story at the end, isn't it?
Yeah, as I said, I was rooting for Andy, hoping that he get him one. Obviously, he's been very good for a very long time, and I was rooting for him. But I didn't think they had the horses to do it, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. I really believe that San Francisco was the better team. I truly believe that. Even now, I still believe that. But because Shanahan outsmarted himself, they ended up losing that ball game. Andy Reid was consistent, stayed true to who he was. I think Pat Mahomes, he was a little hesitant in the first three quarters. He played terrible, threw a couple picks. And but then when they needed him, when they had to have it, he came up big. I mean, in that third and 15 play, and they get 44 yards or whatever. I mean, I don't know how I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, I had the.
You have to look at San Francisco's defense too. Third and 15, how do you let them go for 44? I don't know how that happened.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't know where that happened. I mean, that doesn't happen in Little League. I mean, in high school, you can't do that. You can't give up that kind of play in that situation.
Yeah, I had 49ers all the way, but that I guess that explains why you play these things called the games. No doubt about it. So,
yeah.
All right, Mel. While we have another minute, is there anything that you want to promote? I know that you recently had. You talk about one of your pride and joys or your football. So talk about what you've done recently with the youth football.
We had our showcase, our first annual Motor City Showcase up in Detroit this past weekend. Very pleased and very appreciative to have Detroit Country Day High School host the event. They have an indoor facility up there. So we had 24 schools, 73 kids out there. We had a snowstorm on Saturday, so kids kind of straggled in a little bit late, and we probably missed a few. We had 105 kids sign up. We had 73 kids show up, and truly a really, really nice event. I had a kid come up to me, and this is what makes it all worth it. You have a kid come up at the end and say, "Man, I got my first offers today. I ain't got an offer all year, and I got 3 offers today." So that makes you, and the parents come up and they say the same thing. And a lot of people were really appreciative of the fact that we brought this to the city of Detroit, and we're looking forward to going back there next year and doing it bigger and better. Okay,
on that note, Mel, we want to thank you for being on the Sports Exchange tonight. And once again, it's always a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you, Mel. Have a good night.
All right, thank you, guys. Take care.
Thanks,
welcome.
Mel.
So, Candy, what are your observations about what Mel had to say in terms of not only the Pepper Johnson firing, but some of the dynamics, of what he observed with this new league?
One of the things I kind of want to go back to the overtime in the XFL, because we didn't see this yet. And the rule is the overtime actually consists of 5 rounds staged in alternating single-play possessions, as is customary like in an NHL shootout or MLS penalty kicks. A round will consist of 1 offensive play per team. Each possession starts at the opponent's 5-yard line, and the offensive team has 1 play to score. The team with the most points after 5 rounds is the winner. Now, for scoring purposes, each successful overtime score is worth 2 points. The defensive team cannot score. If the offensive team commits a turnover, the play is over immediately. If the defensive team commits a penalty, the offensive team will be allowed to reattempt from the 1-yard line. Any subsequent penalty committed by the defensive team on a subsequent play, including in future rounds, will result in a score awarded to the offensive team. There will be a minimum of 20 seconds between plays, with the ball spotting officials working in conjunction with TV and official review to signal when the next play begins. All overtimes will have the visiting team on offense first and home team on defense first. Every round will repeat this format. In overtime, the end zone where the overtime takes place will be determined at the 90-minute meeting. I thought that was really interesting, and I thought they don't do a coin toss to start the XFL games either.
Well, that's good, because you know what? Each team is going to get to possess the ball anyways. So meanwhile, Joining us on the Sports Exchange is David Levitt. And David, thanks for being on the program.
Thanks, guys, for having me on again.
You're
Hi,
welcome.
David.
Hey, Candy, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm okay.
So what's the good news?
85-degree weather up here today.
What?
Nice 80-degree weather up here today.
Yeah, the
We
weather-
feel it down here, too.
Yep. So, I hear there's a little XFL going on around here.
We've been talking about XFL a little bit.
Yeah,
What's
in
your
the
thoughts?
State of Florida, but the Vipers didn't show up on
No, they
over
did
the
not.
weekend.
Interesting enough, kind of like what we talked about earlier, there are several Jaguars, former Jaguars, who made their debut this past weekend. 11 in all, if you count players. And there was former coach Kevin Gilbride, who was on the sideline. So the Jaguars were fairly well represented. Some of them had pretty good days.
Okay, go ahead. Elaborate.
Expand.
Okay. And then Tim Cook was a running back. He spent time in camp with the Jaguars 2 years ago. Was on fire over the weekend playing for the Guardians. I believe he had 2 touchdowns. He's a big back. I'm not sure why the Jaguars didn't keep him. I know that he was one of the last cuts made during the 18th season. He's the type of guy who is looking to get back into the league. And hopefully this kind of showcase will allow him to basically beat his resume, for all 32 teams. And that's the great thing about this league. We talked a little bit about earlier, Scott, when we were doing our pre-show talk. These are players that people know about. Trey McBride, wide receiver, he impressed us, if you remember, in camp, and then he looked pretty good during the preseason. And we were talking about whether he should have jumped over C.J. Board, I believe it was, for the final wide receiver spot. He's another guy who's tall and lean, and he's a former NFL player. I think he played 17 games, and he looked really good in camp. I'm not so sure why this wouldn't be one of his stepping stones to get back, possibly at least onto a reserve role with some team, maybe in training camp. There are others to talk about too. Elijah Hood, who was in camp, Jawan Harris, who was on the Jaguars active roster in 2011, which kind of goes to what I was talking about earlier with you, that maybe there are players who are maybe a little bit older who still see that they want to play football and they still think they can play football, and they're using this as a way to get back to the league. Maybe they were doing something else, career-wise, but they still have the passion to play. So
Right.
this is a good way for them to make their case.
So, David, do you know what the average salary is of an XFL player?
Actually, that part I don't know, and I bet you do.
$55,000 for the season. $55,000 for the
Right.
season.
Yeah. So basically, they're every man. They're being paid like every every regular individual. I'm using that in quotes.
Correct.
I like the league. It's a lot more organized this year.
Right.
I know Scott and I talked a little bit about that. That the planning that went into it is something that's gonna bode well for it. I'm not sure that it lasts more than 2 years. I know Scott may have a different opinion, but I do think it has interest for various reasons, especially for fans and the teams here in Florida. First of all, there's no football on right now, and people are going to go through withdrawal. And I'm hoping people will tune in and watch. I know that Tampa Bay didn't do very well, but maybe the fortunes will, turn around this week. And since it's Tampa and it's the only game in town, so to speak, for the state, maybe it gets a state following instead of just a regional following.
Yeah, that reminds me of many years ago when the Miami Dolphins were the only team back in the 70s. Fans from
Right.
Jacksonville would migrate, then Tampa, then ultimately the Buccaneers got their team, and the Jaguars later on. So that's a valid point.
I remember being a kid down in South Florida, living in Kendall, and Dad taking me down to the games in the 70s. And that was the only game in town. So,
Right.
The Dolphins were the team of the state of Florida. I think that this is, and I need you to correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you will. This is more of an offensive type of league. As I was watching some of the highlights, and I did see some of the game with the Guardians. Playing defense probably is not your calling card to get back to the NFL here. I think that it's more geared towards skill positions, or at least maybe that's because it's just starting out. So players like Cook or McBride, or there aren't many other offensive players that I can see. Maybe they have a chance because it's more geared towards the offensive side of the ball. I do know that Jalen Myrick played in the DC Defenders Seattle Dragons game. Myrick was a 7th round pick in 2017. He was on the roster all year, was cut right before the 2018 season, but he was ultra fast. And I don't know if you got to see him in practice, Scott, but he ran a 2.48,
Right.
4.28, 40, and I mean he was just blistering. One of the fastest guys on the field. He just couldn't parlay it into to a long career in the NFL.
Well, I mean, David, if you're telling me defense isn't the way it's going to happen in this league, don't tell that to Pepper Johnson, who got run out of L.A. after one game, because how many more defensive coordinators are going to drop by the wayside? I don't really understand what took place out in L.A. I've heard of one-and-dones, whether it's a date, whether it's a restaurant, but not a coach after one game in a particular league. This is as bizarre as I've ever seen.
I read the story. I've got to think there was something else that went on in there behind closed doors. You don't usually see that. I will say this, that if a defensive coordinator in the XFL can get dropped after one game, Todd Wash has to be thinking to himself, he's got a pretty good job up here at Jacksonville. Because he's got it's like he's had 9 lives.
Right.
He's doing very well for himself.
That's a good
what
point.
What were your impressions for the first week? They had over 3.3 million viewers, which is pretty good for the league itself, because it was promoted, but it wasn't shoved down your throat like it was when the first incarnation of it, arrived, about a decade ago. So, what were your impressions?
Good first act. They were focused on football, not WWE. Vince McMahon obviously has a lot of money invested this time around. So as a result, he realized that he brought a football guy in and focused on football. They brought in really good coaches. They had a great way to evaluate players. And when you look at some of the whole of everything, very well planned, unlike the Alliance of American Football League that tried to get out to a much quicker start, and you saw that they didn't even make it to week 2 or 3 without financial issues. This league has potential to actually do some good things as long as they don't become impatient and Vince McMahon lets his football people go out there and do what they're supposed to do.
Candy, what did you see anything that maybe you thought was innovative or different? I'm looking for angles. I like the product, but I want to continue to be wowed by it. Maybe you saw something on there that caught your eye, or you found really interesting.
I liked when the replay officials talked it through to everybody, so we understood exactly what they were looking at, what they were looking for. They explained the rule to us. I liked that as well. I'm beginning to think that maybe these guys are also auditioning for jobs with the NFL for next year, because we all know that there's plenty of questions about the referees and officials that go on the NFL level. I agree.
Yeah. So, I don't. I just lost my memory. I'm sorry. What I do like too is that it's real. It's very organized. I'm taking off kind of what you said, Scott. That this time around, these are football players. These aren't he hate me and
right.
It's not characters. I wonder what personalities, though, are going to come out of this. Will there be former Jaguars who maybe become a face in the league? I know that Matt McGloin, who was a former Raider quarterback, is in there.
Right.
He's somebody that I'm sure, because of national exposure sites for the Raiders, he becomes a face of this organization, of these franchises. Does Tim Cook, who appears to be a bowling ball type of running back, a bigger version of Maurice Jones-Drew, if you will, becomes a face and somebody that they follow? Every league, no matter what it is, there's always somebody that you talk about. Whether it's the American League or it's the old XFL or it's the Canadian League or it's this, you always find players who basically stand out, and they have a following of their own, so to speak.
I think, David, what you're going to probably see are players that are academically ineligible probably play in this league that can't make it in college. That might be a very thing that we're going to have to monitor. I really do. Because some guys, when they're academically ineligible, they have no place to go.
Right. It's not like, we talked about this earlier. If Maurice Claret back in the early 2000s had the chance to play in the XFL, he probably would have thrived and probably would have had a longer career if he had not gotten caught up with the legal issues that followed him. But it's that kind of player who doesn't do well in school or is academically ineligible, or let's just face it, doesn't go to class and gets kicked out. They're the ones that are going to come seek refuge here, and they're going to shine and make that allows the league to last longer for those reasons.
Completely agree.
Certainly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of TBDs to be determined in this thing. There really are.
Definitely. But I like the first act. I think it's good. I'm curious to see what happens with the second act, whether we're going to get another 3 million people watching over the weekend. But if we do, then this has a real chance to take off.
I agree. I was just looking up. You could go if you're in the Tampa area. You could still buy tickets. The cheapest ticket are $24, so it's more affordable than. I mean, you can buy the season package for $100. Whereas if you're talking about the Tampa Bay Bucks, you're looking at this very lowest is $350.
Right, and that's probably the appeal. I liken it to minor league baseball. Here in Jacksonville, we have the Marlins minor league team, the AA team, and they consider it affordable family fun. Well, this is kind of the same thing on the NFL level. It's affordable family fun. Families that may not be able to afford $300 take their families forward to a game.
Right.
Can do it for under $100, and they still get to see football because that's what they're going to see.
Exactly.
Cool.
So, all right, we got a couple recent Jaguar developments. Let's talk about Ben McAdoo for a moment. I know they're talking about hiring him.
I knew you were going to do it because I had just read it. I like this move, and I know that we talked about we weren't crazy about Ben McAdoo being the offensive coordinator, but with Jay Gruden signed on as the coordinator, and Ben McAdoo, who Eli Manning thrived under, I like this, and also leads me to believe that maybe Nick Foles has more of a chance than we thought he did, because Eli and Nick are similar in the fact that they're statue quarterbacks with strong arms. It also lends to the fact that they're going to get more aggressive on offense. I don't know whether they're going to try and keep the West Coast scheme like Gruden has used, or they're going to try and do a lot more play action. But I think that this is, if anything else, it shows that the Jaguars are serious about finding coaches who knew how to move the football downfield.
I have a question, David. Do you think there's a long shot that Rivers would sign with Jacksonville?
Probably not. However, I'm going to throw this one at you. I was thinking about connection, and I believe that I do believe that there's connection in the NFL. Coaches go places, players follow them.
Right.
So, I believe Tyler Eifert, although he's been injured, becomes a low-risk, high-reward target for the Jaguars at tight end because of his familiarity with Gruden, and he was also he played for him as a rookie in his second season in the NFL and did very well. I'm also not leaving this off the table, but if they somehow worked a deal where they did trade Nick Foles, Andy Dalton could come in and play backup or challenge Gardner Minshew for the starting job.
Well, that's a fresh perspective. I actually like Andy Dalton, just because
I like Andy Dalton a lot.
Yeah, just because he's with a bad franchise like the Bengals. Andy Dalton, give him a fresh start. I think his intelligence is good. He's just been in a very toxic environment with the Bengals. I don't hold anything their failures at all.
But I'm just throwing that out there. It was something that, I have time on my hands and I'm thinking, what kind of angles to look at for the Jaguars. I'm curious to see now. Oh, by the way, we didn't talk about this, but Dom Capers is no longer with the team, and he is in Minnesota.
Right.
From what I understand, he was relieved of his duties, but I'm not sure on that yet. I do know that I had read that he was no longer with the team, and the team had moved on. So I'm not sure. Read between the lines on that.
I don't have to read between the lines. Bottom line is Doug Marrone's desperate. He's trying to overhaul the coaching staff, and I think there's more pressure coming from upstairs than anybody wants to really believe. That's for sure. So,
how about this too? They also got rid of Chris Snee, who was on the scouting team. Chris Snee is Coughlin's son-in-law.
Right.
Dom Capers is one of his closest friends, and maybe the organization is just ridding themselves of everything that is old, hoping to look for something new.
Well, good points. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that a lot of Coughlin's characters are out of there, and that Doug Marrone and Dave Caldwell realize you better make some massive upgrades on this coaching staff or you got some problems, without a doubt. So, good stuff, David. All right, well, I'll tell you what, we'll go ahead and determine whether we're going to talk football or baseball on Thursday's edition of the Sports Exchange. Will slap at TBD. But before you go off the air, why don't you go out there and tell people how they can reach David Levin?
Sure. I'm on fansided.com. I cover baseball and football and various other sports. On Twitter, I am DM719907.
And just to let everybody know, David Levin is our South Florida Tribune broadcasting correspondent, reporting from Northern Florida. And David and I are going to be bringing 108 Stitches baseball talk back pretty soon. Stay tuned for updates on both our Twitter accounts as well as the South Florida Tribune page. So with that said, David, have a good night, and we'll look forward to having you on the program in about 2 days.
Thanks,
all right?
I appreciate it. Talk to you later.
You bet.
Thanks.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
So, Candy, some observations about what your thoughts are with the XFL and what we've got up to this point.
I think everything's positive so far. I just think it needs to keep the momentum, and I don't know if the quality of the players on the field will be enough for the avid fans. Whether they are just starving to have football, then they'll watch. And it doesn't matter what the quality is. But if you have fans that are like, I want to see good quality play, I don't know if they'll stay watching. And that's where the XFL, that's where their struggle is going to be. And I think they've thought a lot of things out. I think they have a fairly decent product. But I can tell you that the quarterback play was significantly not the same as you would on an NFL. And I understand that. Because even in the NFL, you have your top-tier quarterbacks, your mid-tier, and maybe your rookies just trying to get there. These aren't even the rookies trying to get in the NFL.
Well, for Dallas, with all due respect for Dallas, Landry Jones, their starting quarterback, suffered an injury. I'll be curious to see what happens there. Cardale Jones is a guy I don't think has gotten a fair opportunity in the NFL. He was drafted as a fourth-round pick in Buffalo and then held the clipboard under Phillip Rivers. So he's a guy that I could definitely see actually going ahead and getting an opportunity in the NFL at some point if he continues to show pretty good play. And it doesn't hurt that he has a head coach in Pep Hamilton as one of the better offensive minds as well.
So do you think this will be a feeder league into the NFL?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about it. No
Okay.
doubt about it. No, it's a fair question. I don't think there's any doubt about it at all.
So do you think
and
more-
the XFL knows that if it is a feeder league, that they're still going to be able to attract a good quality of player. Now they'll probably get good quarterbacks. I think that they're a quarterback league.
Do you think that the college play, especially like the quarterbacks, will not be as strong because people will come out of high school and they might go to the XFL instead of going into college?
No, I don't see that becoming an issue at all. I really don't. No, I think you'll still be okay.
Okay.
Don't see that whatsoever. So, it's one of those types of situations where it's a fair question, okay, but I don't see it happening.
Because you're saying it's a feeder league, and if there's people that can't get into college, because let's face it, some colleges have strict academic requirements. I can name a few. I know Wisconsin, Michigan, and some of those have very strict academic restrictions.
Yeah, I don't see where that's really going to have that big of an impact. I really don't. So I think the college quarterbacks are going to be the college quarterbacks is what they're going to do, and as a result, that's what you're pretty much dealing with. So far so good. Looking forward Bill Winters to come on the program, and Bill will certainly give us his input about what we have so far.
The only news that I see that was kind of breaking, and this is in the baseball side of things that we haven't talked about tonight. Red Sox named Ron Renneke as the interim manager, which most people thought was going to happen.
Yeah. Well, they're just waiting for a lot of the background stuff to take place is what they were looking to do. So.
Well, you think if they name him only as interim, that means they're not naming him as manager. Did you think he was going to get?
Yeah, I did. I saw that coming. I really did. So, but meanwhile, joining us on the Sports Exchange is Bill Winters, and Bill Winters is former offensive lineman for the New York Giants. So, Bill, welcome to the Sports Exchange.
Good evening, Scott. How are you?
All right. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
So, what's your take of opening act for the XFL? I know you've been a big promoter of the league, so.
The XFL broke all kinds of records and all kinds of metrics for spring football. So a lot of the skeptics that have been sitting on the fence are slowly being won over. I think as this league plays out, I think you're going to see it become a part of American persona. Some pretty telling statistics that prove that.
Yeah, I mean, you've been talking about the league from the beginning, Bill, and now for me, seeing it for the first time, now, you talk about all the, developmental camps that you have, trying to weed through players and who you're actually bringing in till you get the final 46 and so forth. And I think that as we continue to find out how all of what you've talked about has played out, what were your thoughts about the overall product on the field?
Okay. First of all, it was okay. But let me give you an example of what's going on. The most important thing that has destroyed spring football in the past is finances.
Right.
That problem is solved. They have a really good TV contract. ESPN, Fox, and the other network, I believe it's ABC, love this. The metrics were unbelievable. They outdrew the NBA. In St. Louis, they had 7 million people watch the Battlehawks, and that blew out, and there was an NHL game going on at the same time. So we've got 30 to 40 million people that do fantasy, and they've done a lot of field studies on this, so they know that if they don't run out of money, that this league will do fine as long as they stick to a fiscal responsibility, what they're doing. I just want to go on record and say this. We knew that back in the 80s. Okay, the NFL torpedoed that league. The NFL's tried to do that a little bit this time with signing NFL players to futures contracts, but some players are starting to cross over already. In fact, the best receiver and the highest paid player in the CFL, who's been up there for a long, long time, a kid by the name of S.J. Green, just got out of his CFL contract and signed with the Seattle Dragons this past weekend, because the way the league is working is the team that has the worst statistics for that week gets the first pick of any player that's going to cross over. So I think what you're going to see is the talent level is going to increase and dramatically increase either within 3 years. It's really, I mean, you're going to have star power. And that's what's, the only thing that's missing right now. But I was very buoyed by the metrics and what's going on, and the future looks bright. Because right now it just looks like a high-powered World League of American football. But as players start to go down, they're going to get worn a little thin with talent, but they'll be able to replace that. But next year, the kids are going to come out in droves. In the third year, you're probably going to have players crossing over from the NFL. And I will tell you that this S.J. Green player is getting paid a lot more money than the rest of the guys on the team. So they're already starting to tweak it a little bit. Right? So there's a couple of factors going.
Very interesting.
That's why I think this league is going to do well.
Yeah, well, I tell you, my reasons as to why I think the league is going to do well is they've made some notable rule changes that, the kickoffs figure to be safer, the transparency with replays makes it more relatable to the fan, the extra points, and some of these rules, Bill, could very well be adopted into the NFL at some point as they see it in real time.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The NFL is a little bit of a dinosaur. I think next year you'll see the laser side markers, so you can clearly see them from the sidelines, right. 1, 2nd, 3rd, 4th down. I think the instant replay was a coup d'etat for the XFL, because it made the game go by a lot faster to destroy the rhythm of the game. There weren't a lot of commercials. The game was a little faster paced, and it didn't stink of trying to just grind people into money. And for me, it was just a lot more fun watching it. And I think that the NFL is going to incorporate a little bit of that, because I think they're getting a little too greedy. I think the product's turning off the young generation. And the kids who were watching this, and let's just say this to you, they had 3.3 million viewers in their first week, so it was very successful. But they haven't even counted the kids that were streaming and gambling with their phones. Those numbers haven't come in yet. And also, they haven't even gotten the fantasy going yet, and they're probably going to do that about halfway through the year. So those numbers should dramatically increase. But even if everything stayed the same, the league would be available for 2 or 3 years, because they weren't even looking to do 17,000 average fans.
Yeah.
They were really spreading. It's going to drop down a little bit. But the Seattle game, what they did is they paid half rent for the stadiums too. They only used the bottom half. And I understand the Seattle game was sold out in the bottom half, and they're starting to put people in the upper decks now. So, there's going to be good fan support for this. Again, got a good TV contract. They're deep with money. They're spending money the right way. And they're building this league. And they're already, and I believe that you're going to see some expansion next year. I think within 3 years, you're going to have a league that's going to be very, very strong and be a great developmental league for the NFL and have some star names.
Good points, Bill. So let me go ahead and touch base on a few. We only saw 4 stadiums last week. So now you've got St. Louis, which will obviously be playing games in the Dome, where the Rams used to call home. And, of course, Seattle.
20,000 plus already.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, I can imagine. Mm-hmm. And let not lose sight of the fact that St. Louis lost an NFL team, so they're a football-hungry town. And then Seattle intrigues me as well. And I think all the markets, I'll be curious to see what Tampa does. But again, we'll talk about some of these isolated instances. Are there any particular markets that you think will do better than others?
No, I think they're all pretty much going to stay the same. The whole key here is that most of the stadiums are using MLS stadiums, and it seems to be packed. And even the major markets like New York and Seattle that are using big stadiums that are 80,000 and you're only seeing 20,000, the fans don't seem to care. So I think that bodes well for attendance and more people coming out to the games. But I will tell you this, okay? And I'm a real big believer in this. You know, I'm a history major, and monopolies always do the same thing. They get too greedy and turn people off. The NFL's too expensive. There's a number of people now that are Buck season ticket holders that literally are buying tickets up because they can get a season ticket for $100, okay, and they can take their employees to see a game and have a lot of fun, and their season ticket for one individual is $5,000. The price, the NFL's priced itself out of the market. And, you know, this is good family entertainment, and a good bang for the buck. And people don't mind paying $20, $25 to see a ticket to see a good football game and be entertained. They don't care about the stars. They don't care about all that. That will come. People enjoy watching football in a competitive game.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was too, Bill. You know, outside of the Tampa game, a lot of these other games were interesting. And the Dallas team did not even have their starting quarterback in action, Landry Jones, who's set to make his debut over the weekend.
Yeah. Dallas supposedly has the best team. I'm going to go on record and tell you who I think's going to win it already.
Go ahead.
Okay, the Houston team, that quarterback they have can spin it. I saw him when I was down there practicing.
Right.
He can throw the deep ball really, really well. Threw 4 touchdown passes in the game against the LA team, who actually fired the defensive coordinator right in the stadium after the game.
In stadium,
Pepper Johnson.
Right.
And he can make plays with his legs. And June Jones found him when he was at Temple, when he played him, and he threw, ran for, threw 4 touchdowns and ran for a couple more. And I was down there, and I was very impressed with him. He's kind of like a Fran Tarkenton type guy.
Right.
And so it's fun to watch. This league is going to be driven by good quarterback play. The depth, the league's going to have a little bit of trouble, because guys are going to get hurt and go down, and they're going to have Team 9 there as a farm team. So as we revolving door. But some guys are already starting to cross over. Some guys have been sitting on the fence now that were, NFL players, going to sit back and go, yeah, I'm going to go play in this league. All right, and then also the salaries are going to be adjusted a little bit as well, like I just told you, which really surprised me when I found that out, because I thought they were going to stick to the mantra of, everybody getting paid the same and everything, but they're going to go out and make selective moves to get players in to improve teams. And Seattle just got S.J. Green, and he's been up there playing for $300,000 in the CFL for the last 10 years. So he's actually going to be making more than $100. All right, so, that looks well. That boy's well.
Yeah, that's amazing how this league is going to make changes on the fly. But that doesn't surprise me, Bill, because week 1 was curiosity. I think every week becomes more intrigued. And the thing is this league is not underfunded like the Alliance of American Football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've got deep they got deep pockets. But the thing that I like is they've got a guy, Oliver Luck, who knows how to run a league. He's got a lot of experience. They're fiscally responsible. They got young kids that are hungry, that are going out there and playing hard and not loafing. They're getting rid of all the fluff, and just giving a quick, entertaining game where they're going to have 20,000 fans at a game. It's going to be great family entertainment. You're going to see good football, and it's just going to continue to grow and grow. And I believe next year you're going to see teams in the following cities: Columbus, Ohio, Miami, Orlando, Chicago, Colorado, San Jose, and then possibly San Antonio. And I think what they're going to do is they're going to expand to 2 teams to possibly 4 teams next year, or at least 4 teams by within 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and those markets are very, very strong, and that's what separates me from a lot of people you're going to talk about. Is I've been involved in spring football for a long, long time. I played for a franchise that was put together in 2 years that was better than several of the NFL teams, the Tampa Bay Bandits, along with some of the other teams like the Philadelphia Stars. And so there's a lot of good football players out there. And I think that people are getting tired of the NFL doing what they're doing. I think they've killed their product a little bit. I think it's turning into flat-out entertainment. And I think people just want to get back to a simpler product that moves along at a faster clip, that sees real good football, and they could care less about the stars.
It wouldn't break my heart if they had a franchise in Detroit, because once upon a time, the Michigan Panthers were in the USFL, and they did win a championship, by the way, just in case you want to know. They supported spring football.
I'm very familiar with the Michigan Panthers. I know a lot of the guys on the team. I watched Bobby Hebert get his start. I played against them when I was with the Bandits when they brought in Anthony Carter in his first game.
Right.
And they wound up, going out and getting 3 linemen for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
How's that?
They did exactly what some of the XFL teams are going to do is they're going to start loading up their roster as the season plays out.
I was actually at that game that you're referring to, and boy, the Panthers didn't look good. They didn't look like a championship caliber team that day, but boy, the way they picked it up as the season progressed, you're right, they were back. And so you never know. That's true. What these teams are going to do midstream. Again, it's to me, it's like a boxing match. You're trying to figure things out a little bit, and size it up, and then all of a sudden you find out what happens later on. Good point, though, Bill.
Yes. Well, how about my boy Chad Knauf from the quarterback for the LA Express? Had been there for 5 days and played fairly well. So I think what you're going to see is a product that's going to solidify the American consciousness. I think you're going to, there's going to be a good entertainment in the spring because there's really nothing out there. The NBA is really taking a hit. The ratings are nowhere near the XFL.
Right.
Even when LeBron's playing. And the numbers, the Nielsen, I'm giving you the Nielsen ratings. So nationally, it outdrew the NBA, and regionally, it did very, very well. And, I think that these teams are still finding their legs because they haven't been together that long. And I just think that they get this first year under their belt. I think there's going to be a quantum leap in the second year as far as what people expect and what they're going to get both on and off the field. And they're still developing their product, but I think it was a real nice first week, and we'll continue to watch it grow.
Yeah, it's amazing. I certainly wasn't watching the NBA, and I got intrigued by football, and we started actually watching it on Sunday because I had other commitments of my own, but I didn't think twice about watching the XFL because I was curious about the type of play. Part of the intrigue was everything you have talked about leading up to the league, where I wanted to find out what you were saying and how much substance it had in terms of what type of players you're actually putting out there. So curiosity definitely got me cultivated.
Well, I got the thing up in Vegas because it was a huge hit up in Vegas as far as gambling. And I told you before, we're going to a new economy. You're going to be seeing kids sitting, streaming games with their phones, gambling and paying fantasy, and trying to generate revenue. And they also have an interactive app that's going to allow a kid to be a coach. That's what's going to draw the young audience. Okay, they're not going to be able to afford to go to an NBA game, and they're going to go and they're going to see a fan experience with, which is going to speed up the game. And I think that it's going to find a real nice niche on this time of year. And we'll get away from being a high-powered World Football League. Just remember those games were kind of fun to watch, but nobody knew who they were. They all have their own stars. And as this thing evolves, they'll get a handle on the streaming, okay, and the gambling and the interactive apps. And it's just going to make it continue to keep growing. But the ratings beat the NBA, which is the Nielsen ratings, beat the NBA, and that's really important. They have all the networks really behind this thing because they see the potential in it. All the stadiums, were sold out in the bottom rows, which I thought was really, really nice. And you're looking at St. Louis and Seattle numbers for their first home games, and they're pretty much sold out on the bottom, and they're moving to the upper deck already. So, that looks well. And, you just look at from a business point of view, it's time to expand. And it's like anything else. About every 20 or 30 years, we see an expansion in the marketplace. And this time they're doing it right, so there won't be any antitrust cases like the USFL. There won't be any foldings because of people running out of money or going to prison for cryptocurrency or bank fraud.
Right.
You got one guy running 8 teams who knows what he's doing. And I just think it's going to be fun to watch, and it's just going to get better and better and better.
Well, when you talk about that, Bill, let's think about it for a moment. Okay, the LA Chargers played in the LA Galaxy Stadium, and I have a feeling the XFL, you got me thinking about USFL because of our back days, but the XFL day, people had to be thinking, well, we could follow the same model. Everybody knows everything's a copycat league. And they saw the Chargers were playing in Carson, the home of the MLS team. And as a result, now they took on the model to bring the XFL. So I see some relatively good comparisons based on what you're talking about. So, yeah, I would rather, for this particular league, have a 17,000 fan turnout in a 22,000 seat stadium where you have a lot of energy, and I think that the XFL picked up on that quite well.
Mm-hmm. Well, the stadiums, the venues where they're going to be playing. Let's take a look at Miami. They could possibly have a team next year.
Sure.
They're probably going to play at Marlins Park.
Okay.
FIU had to move. Was going to play. They played the University of Miami, I believe. Florida International did.
Right.
At Miami Park.
Right.
28,000 fans there. 28,000 fans there. I think they actually beat the U in that game.
They did, Bill.
That's probably where the Miami team is going to play. I don't even know where Marlins Park is. Okay, it's been a while since I've been down in Miami, so I'm looking forward to getting a tour of that when I come down.
Marlins Park, Bill, is at the site of the Orange Bowl. If you've been to the Orange Bowl, that's where it's at. They built it on the grounds of the Orange Bowl.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then. Yeah, I was going to say, I would have known that they built a new arena. But yeah, the old Orange Bowl. And Columbus is, there's some solid markets that I think they're going to expand. And I just think that it's realistically, it's going to be a good blue collar league that's going to have its own stars and do well.
Well,
and the TV contracts, all the games being televised, there will be exposure, and as long as they don't do anything stupid and they keep on grinding, I think they'll be able to build it into a good product.
One day,
the players need it.
Yeah, one day we're going to talk about expansion possibilities, but I do want to mention one that does intrigue me while we're talking about the XFL in detail tonight. And I would love to see San Diego get a team, even though the franchise didn't work out in the Alliance of American Football League. Then again, none of them did. I think that San Diego would be right at the top of my list to bring one there since they got it right in St. Louis. And if it's managed properly, it'll work.
Yeah, there's no argument here. San Antonio is another market as well. However, really what they're looking at is these MLS arenas that are being built for these soccer stadiums, and nobody's going to the games.
Right.
So, like, for example, you can go to Orlando, Columbus, Colorado, San Jose. Those are arenas that are built for soccer stadiums that are going to seat 20, 25,000 fans. They would be perfect for some of these teams coming in.
Well, it's funny how you.
So I mean,
It's okay. It's funny how you bring that up because MLS wanted Detroit to build a stadium on the old jail site, and the Fords, Dan Gilbert and Tom Goris, all had an idea. Why do you need to do that when you have Ford Field there, and we can do the same thing, block off the top, bring in the bottom, but it wasn't good enough. Yet there were other stadiums like Atlanta and Seattle doing it, and Charlotte will do it. So the MLS to me is a league that's very mixed up. If you're really that steadfast about soccer stadiums, that's fine. But really, you mean to tell me that you wouldn't want to be able to go ahead, have an existing arena for a team that's only going to play so many games a year? I don't understand the logic behind the MLS when you have billionaire owners willing to put their money up to bring your team into a major market. And I'm not just trying to single out the Detroit aspect totally, but how can you contradict one market or rule out one market and then be able to show a double standard while you're willing to do the same for Charlotte but not Motown, which is a much bigger market than some of these, and then Nashville, Detroit's a much bigger. But you understand the double standard, where the MLS, to me, football will always trump the XFL no matter what. And no pun intended.
Always trump the MLS, you mean?
Yeah, that's true, too. The other brand of football. I don't care.
Yeah.
But you get where I'm going with this.
Nobody's anything else on television with football because of streaming now.
Right.
Even TV shows. So everybody wants to watch football.
Right.
And a lot of it is just because of what we talked about before. Fan engagement. It's not choreographed. They don't know what's going to happen, in a fun experience. And, when the price is right, I think you can find markets. Now, to answer your question about Detroit, about MLS, I just think it depends on the market. Houston's a football city. In fact, Houston was a top draw of the XFL.
Mm-hmm.
The Dynamo aren't drawing. Oliver Luck used to run that team. He's the commissioner of the league.
Right.
So I think he sees the handwriting on the wall. But there are certain areas where soccer is going to draw.
Right.
Seattle, New York, these are your major metropolitan cities that have a tremendous, following for soccer.
Right.
I don't think Detroit's known as a soccer town, okay? So I can see the Fords kind of sitting back and going, I don't think this is going to fly. So that's probably why, because they know their town. So a lot of it has to do with research,
right,
and particular regions of the country. Okay, but I just know that the markets that they're looking at, these markets have been strong forever for spring football. Like when you think of Ohio, there should be a team in Ohio for the XFL. But when you think of Ohio, you go, where's it going to be? Columbus.
Right.
Columbus has always had a team in the spring league. Okay, and they've got an arena for MLS. There's nothing to do in Columbus. All right, so you've got a city that's going to wrap its arms around entertainment. Same thing with St. Louis. These are a little bit of gambles. All right, but St. Louis is drawing real well. I was really surprised at the Seattle numbers. I really was.
Oh, yeah.
That's just a sports town. They draw well in soccer too, but they don't have a basketball team.
Right.
All right, so there's a lot going on. All right, Tampa's a great market, but they're not real big on basketball. All right, and you look at Miami, and Miami's a tourist area. So I think that as the areas expand, or if the XFL is expand, I hope it won't expand too fast. Maybe 2 teams next year and then 2 teams the following. Okay, there's some other cities out there that deserve consideration that aren't even in the mix right now. Teams like San Diego and San Antonio.
Right.
So who knows where we're going to be in 5 years?
Yeah, but
we just follow the research and what these people get paid to do a living, do for a living, and this is what they're telling us.
But yet, Bill,
we're looking at Marcus. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's all right, but yet, Bill, here's the thing. I know at one point the MLS talked about moving out of Columbus. I don't know whether they were trying to get a better stadium deal or not, but
I was going to games.
True. So, I, in my opinion, is if the MLS is thinking about leaving Columbus, I only have 2 good words for that, Bill. You know what they are? Good riddance. Good riddance.
I never liked. I'm not going to sit here and knock, soccer. I enjoy watching it, but I just know in Columbus, if they have a team there, they're going to study. They're going to study 15,000, 17,000 fans, and that's just gravy.
Right.
If you sit on television and you watch a game in Columbus, Ohio, and you see 15,000, 18,000 fans in an MLS, it looks packed.
Right.
So you're not playing in a boneyard, and then there's a lot of action going on. So and it's being televised. So
right.
I mean, that's all they're looking for. They're not really happy with the 17,000 fans. They're not even looking to average that. So let's say there's a little bit of a drop off over the next couple of weeks, which there might be, there may not be. All right, I just think you're only playing 5 games at home, so I don't think there's going to be much of a drop-off. So they've already kind of hit their numbers. But it's the ratings on television that are driving it, and then also the streaming. Right. That's the thing that there's the unknown here. All right, and according to Nielsen, nationally, they're doing really, really well as far as people tuning in and watching the television. And I also think you have a crossover of people that watch this because of wrestling.
Right.
Okay, and Vince McMahon, they're familiar with Vince's name. They want to see what he put it out of. And I think they did a really, really nice job broadcasting the game. I mean, broadcasting the league. And doing some things out there that were innovative that the NFL may copy down the line. So I think, it's going to find its niche. I was pleasantly surprised, to be honest with you. And me, I'm a skeptic.
Right.
But when I talked to my people today and doing my preparation for the show, the statistics they gave me were pretty awesome. And it kind of made me a bigger believer than I was before.
All right, my final question, Bill, and it is my final question, then we'll let you promote your YouTube channel and so forth, is NBA Commissioner Adam Silver starting to get nervous that his team, after 1 week could feel threatened by the XFL, knowing full well that, like you mentioned the whole program, football is certainly a sport that we all gravitate to year-round.
Well, the numbers right now, you should be worried a little bit. All right, and but I think what will happen is, as we start to go towards the playoffs, all right, I think you're going to see more interest in it. But I also think that the NBA has given too much power to the players.
Right.
And the players are now running the league.
Right.
And I think it's turning the fans off because of the fact that a player can leave and go to another team, and they can build a power team, and they already know who's going to win it. All right, so and then you have a lot of small market teams that'll never be a factor. So it's going to be the Lakers and the Clippers, and it's going to be the Heat, All right, and maybe one in Milwaukee, and that's it. All right, so there's not a lot of fan interest. What drives the NBA is gambling.
Right.
Okay, now when you have players doing stuff like, I don't know if this is true or not. Okay, did LeBron James decide not to? So he wasn't going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't know if it was fake news or not.
Don't know.
But there's some stuff going on out there that is sort of turning the American public off. All right, and this stuff that went on at the beginning of the season with Maury, talking about China.
Right.
Okay, and then they're sitting there talking about social justice.
Right.
And all this other nonsense, and they turn around and look like hypocrites.
Oh, yeah.
When they turn around and, start kissing China's ass because they don't want to lose billions of dollars. People see right through that. All right, and I just think, that some of these leagues need to check themselves a little bit because they're getting a little full of themselves because they're making so much money. And they're getting away from the essence of the game.
Right.
People don't want to hear all this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
They want to watch a basketball game.
Oh, yeah.
They don't want to watch fights. They don't want to watch this. They don't want to watch that. And that's what I call the sanctity of the product.
Right.
Okay, and it'll correct itself, and I think the NBA will come on strong. I'm a big fan of the NBA. But some of the stuff that I'm watching out there is going, all right, enough already.
Well,
okay, and I'm, that's just the way I feel about it.
All right. We'll wrap it up on this note. I'll just say this, Bill. The NBA won't recover if there's too much drama. With that said, I'm putting an exclamation point to that, okay? And then you got about 60 seconds to talk about how people can follow you before Jake Ronholt closes out the program.
All right, well, you can follow me on Facebook, just Bill Winters. And you see a purple circle with me wearing a Nike hat. Then go to YouTube and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And the easiest way to do it is just go into YouTube search engine and type in Bill Winters and type in the word football right after it. The purple circle will be right up on top and hit subscribe. All right, you can also follow me on Wikipedia. All right, if you just Google my name, Bill Winters in football, it'll come right up. You can see my body of work. All right, and that's it. And you can also hear about our podcast on Spotify and the other search engines for podcasts like Apple and iHeart. And that's it.
All right, Bill, I'll tell you what, we'll have our own show tomorrow night. But meanwhile, thanks for being on the program, talking all XFL with Bill Winters, a guy who's been following this league more than any of us because he's had a front row seat in Houston while it's all playing out. So, all right, Bill, thanks for being on the Sports Exchange tonight, and we'll be ready to do your own broadcast tomorrow. Good night, Bill.
Good night, Scott.
What's your take on that, Candy?
That was a lot to take in.
Yeah.
I think he has some good points with the XFL. Obviously, being a former NFL player, he has insights that you and I just don't understand because we've never played in that league.
Right.
We also have always talked about how you and I are big sports fans, but yet we won't turn on an NBA game. If there's nothing else on the TV, we'd rather turn it off than watch an NBA game.
Well, I cite that due to drama. I'm just sick and tired of it. I used to cover it at a time, Candy, when basketball mattered, the game was physical, and the quality of the play, and guys were playing for their minutes, not what they're going to do off the court. I really don't care. Mm-hmm. So if it means that you've got me addicted to crime shows, I'm okay with that because it's not only is it a deviation from that, but if I want drama, I'll get it that way. I'm just so sick and tired of the drama. I really am. Basketball is basketball. Nobody cares what these guys have to say as much.
I'd say it's moved from being a sport to just being entertainment, just like if you're watching a movie or something like that.
I'll take your entertainment comment and double my cards. How about a sideshow?
Can be, yeah. Although they're making a lot more money than a sideshow would make.
Well, but the point is, it is a sideshow. Yep. The headlines off the court, overshadow the play. And when
I agree.
Xavier McKnight and I talked on the Real and the Rare last week about all of this, and we mentioned that the Houston Rockets made a trade where they're looking to have small ball instead of regular basketball where you have the hard. To me, that's a version of a run and shoot for a team which is very, very desperate is really what it is.
I agree. The NBA has changed dramatically from the days of the Magic Johnson, Larry Birds, and, even Michael Jordan and them. It's just not the same league as it used to be.
Yeah, no, it isn't. That's why Adam Silver has to do some things, trying to figure out what he's going to do with the postseason. Is he going to bring it down to 78? How many people are really going to pay attention to the All-Star game this weekend? I'm not.
Honestly, I wouldn't have even known that it was going to be on this unless you had said
Thanks
something.
for making my point. I really appreciate that.
I mean, baseball season's started spring training. I think
right.
Players are reporting this week.
Yeah.
I know that more than I know NBA's.
So we're going from the XFL to spring training, and nobody's going to really give a damn about the NBA All-Star game.
I mean, there's still hockey going on, too.
The NHL, too. Oh, yeah. There's hockey. And as time goes on here on the Sports Exchange, we're going to have hockey guests on. But somehow, some way, I haven't been able to gravitate to going ahead and bringing on NBA guests because I just don't feel... and I feel bad. I'm saying this because I really, for a lot of years, enjoyed covering the league. But how times have changed.
And isn't there a big race going on this weekend, too?
Called the Daytona 500.
That takes precedence, too, over an NBA All-Star game.
Right. And for those of you that want Daytona 500 updates, you can go to www.southfloridatribune.com. We have a lot of good information coming down the pipe from I-95 South in Daytona here to our online publication. And as we continue to grow the broadcast division, we have a lot of good things looking ahead, don't we, Candy?
Yeah, if you don't catch this program live, you can catch us on, you can go to Spreaker.com, you can go to the podcast section of iHeartRadio, podcast section of Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify,
Well, you got the main one.
And you can also, we do repost it on South Florida Tribune. That was www.southfloridatribune.com. We have many writers that are writing articles. We get a lot of college updates, a lot of good information there. So please visit there. Listen to any of the podcasts. We talked to Scott referenced that him and Xavier had a show the other night called The Real and the Rare. You can find it on www.southfloridatribune.com. Or again, you can go to Spreaker.com, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio. Please listen and give us your input.
Yeah, and again, I think what we're going to be incorporating into the equation in a matter of weeks is we're going to be bringing this show to Facebook Live as well. I think this is something that we want people, when we interact with not only the local guest here in the area, but also be able to have the local guests connect with a lot of our national guests as well on different platforms. The South Florida Tribune podcast is going to be a non-sports related type of broadcast, which we're able to go ahead and bring on different people so they can talk about what their brands on the program. So, again, it's so important, Candy, to talk about versatility. It really is. And that's what we're striving to do. We're always trying to do things a little bit better. Over the weekend, we will be covering Nova Southeastern University's men's basketball team. I'm looking forward to that game. You'll be taking the photos because the number 5 team takes on the number 6 team in Florida Southern. So with that said, we want to welcome South Florida Tribune contributor Jake Rongholt to the program. Jake, thanks for being on the program, Jake.
No, not a problem. How's it going, Scott?
Everything's going great. Thank you for asking.
Hi, Jake.
You're on with Candy Ebling.
Hello, Candy.
How's it going, Jake?
Oh, no complaints on this Tuesday night. Just sitting around. Was working on some XFL stuff. That's about it. So
tell me what your thoughts are on the XFL.
I thought the XFL was a lot of fun to watch. I'm getting kind of tired of people saying, "Oh, we're all burned down on football." Look, the fact is that this is a 10-week season. They want to do the XFL championship on April 26th, which is a day after the NFL draft. So they want to be able to get that good feel of spring football, even during the combine, even during March Madness, where there is a good alternative. I actually thought the football play was a lot better than last year. When I was watching the Alliance of American Football League last year, I saw a lot of issues. I saw drop passes. I saw ducks of throws. I saw A lot of issues with the quarterback not reacting enough, getting sacked too many times, making too many mistakes. We only had 2 quarterbacks in these games that made mistakes, and that was Cody Canoff for L.A. and Aaron Murray for Tampa Bay. Otherwise, everybody else played very well. Cardell Jones, I thought he was the best player on the field. Outside of him and P.J. Walker, who had 4 touchdowns. There was some good wide receiver play. You had the son of Ricky Roll for Seattle, 5 receptions, 88 yards, 2 touchdowns. You had Nelson Spruce coming back, former Packer, who had 11 receptions, $103 for Los Angeles. The defense was very good by the Guardians, the Roughnecks, and the Defenders. I thought you could just see that there was NFL pedigree on this coaching staff with Pep Hamilton. And here's the thing. All of the coaches are all former NFL coordinators. So Jonathan Reyes, who was a tight ends coach for years. Bob Stoops, a longtime college coach. Kevin Gilbride, Super Bowl champion winning offensive coordinator for the New York Giants. Pep Hamilton, who's had years and years of experience. Mark Trestman, who's had 34 years of experience in the NFL. Winston Moss, assistant head coach to Mike McCarthy in Green Bay. And then you had Jim Zorn. I mean, how could you not look at that and go, you know what, there might be actually something here. Look, we're not looking for the XFL to be like a 10, 15-year league, but we're at least looking for something to make us feel like, okay, I'm excited for next week because we have, I think, the game of the year so far, and that's the Guardians and the Defenders. I mean, they both have good defenses, good quarterback play by Matt McGloin and Cardell Jones, and then the Battlehawks and the Roughnecks will battle it out. So we got a couple of good games coming up here this weekend, and I like that they are staying small within a big market. I mean, they only have 8 teams, but all of them are in top 20 markets. New York, L.A., Houston, Dallas, Washington, D.C., Seattle, Tampa Bay, and St. Louis. The lowest market is 21 with the St. Louis Battlehawks. And we all know that St. Louis wanted a football team. Now they're getting their wish. So the XFL, I think, is off to a pretty good start. We'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, I'd like to see a franchise land in San Diego, Jake. I think that it would definitely, the Alliance tried to go ahead and do it. Then again, they didn't last very long. But I think the XFL definitely will gauge what they're doing. I think the most impressive thing to me about the XFL is they're using these MLS stadiums. So what we saw with the Chargers over the last couple of years with them utilizing the Galaxy's stadium in Carson, where you have a more intimate feeling, to me was a very shrewd move.
Yeah, I mean, but the fact is with LA, and you have that pedigree with the Chargers, you can't be going back to a soccer stadium. With the XFL, it's a different story. You got a mixture of football stadiums, baseball stadiums, and soccer. I mean, Dallas Renegades are playing in the old Texas Rangers ballpark. You got the Guardians playing at MetLife. You got the Defenders playing where the DC United play. The Seattle Dragons will have CenturyLink Field to themselves. And then that's what you want. I mean, you want to get that feel of like 20, 25,000 capacity. Once you get to that point and it becomes consistent, then you can start thinking bigger. But like I said, I like the way that Oliver Luck and Vince McMahon are thinking small in a big city. And I think that is what is going to help grow the product going forward. They have to give this time to grow. If they push it too much, then they're going to end up like the USFL, the UFL, and, of course, the Alliance of American Football League. We knew that the AF was in a lot of trouble once we found out that Tom Dundon was pretty much their last hope of pay, and the players weren't even getting paychecks in their first week. They weren't even getting their paychecks.
Right.
At least the good news is these XFL players, they got their checks, and they didn't bounce today.
Well, that's a good point, but I'll tell you what, though, I like about the Dallas situation. I'm glad that they were able to utilize the Rangers' old ballpark and retrofit it for the XFL team. I am so sick and tired, and I really am, of all these stadiums that are 30 years old and getting torn down. Thankfully, though, Atlanta didn't do it with the Braves' old stadium, Turner Field. Georgia State, they're using it. Texas followed the same suit when the Rangers got a new ballpark. They retrofitted this for the XFL. That, to me, is good. And, yeah, and to elaborate on your point, Jake, okay, they can go high and low depending on the supply and demand. So when you look at the combination of things, about 20, 25,000, don't kid yourself. If the supply and demand is that much, don't you think at any given point that you can go to an NFL stadium and if you have to go ahead and take a game there? After all, think about it. You know, if they outgrow that stadium, FedEx Field is there, and of course there's always RFK Stadium. I don't know if they'll ever use it, but the bigger stadiums in many of these markets are still available.
Oh, no doubt. But like I said before, you want to be able to get a good start. So you want to be able to look up and say, okay, how many empty seats do we have today? I mean, there were empty seats. So we have to understand that. Once they get to that consistency, though, of that high attendance, then you could start thinking about bigger stadiums. Then you could start thinking, I mean, because the funny thing is, my parents live in Dallas, and they were going to go to a Dallas Renegades game. The tickets were $100. So, like I said, they're thinking in a big city mentality with a small product, and we'll see if it has some growth. What is really working for them, actually, that I really like, is that they have ESPN, they have Fox, they have that high-quality television, they have the graphics, they have the teams, and I've worked with a lot of people from Fox Sports. That's top of the line right there. Those are the guys who are at the top of their game, know what they are doing in the truck, with the camera, with the mic, and that's what you want to see. And you saw that at ESPN, it kind of had a couple of bugs in the system, but they at least showed that there was high-quality play, and what was really helping them the most was that I turn on ESPN, I turn on Fox, and look what's playing. Highlights to the XFL. That's huge. The F was even getting those highlights last year. ESPN didn't care. Fox didn't care. They didn't play them on their little Sports Center shows or anything like that. It wasn't even a topic. This week, Scott, I heard every single radio show, every single television show talking about the XFL. We're in the dead zone of sports talk right now. Thank goodness we have at least something to talk about outside of the Mookie Betts trade and the Astros and getting ready for spring training. We have the XFL to talk about.
Well, let's take it to a new level, Jake, okay? The NBA is looking on, and the XFL dipped into their TV audience, and the NBA has an all-star game that, frankly, Jake, nobody's going to really care about over the weekend. And the longer the drama continues in that league, the more and more people will be turned off. I don't have many NBA guests on this show, not because because I probably haven't pursued them very hard. One of my correspondents that want to talk about it, I'll open the floor to you if you think there's a topic worthwhile. But it's not like I'm openly trying to find these guys, because it's a league that once upon a time talked about basketball, not the drama. Like I love to kid around, Jake, with you and everybody else that'll listen. The National Drama League doesn't fit my programming criteria. Jake, it really does not do it. And the XFL is diving into it. So my question to you is, what is Adam Silver thinking about the potential possibility that football, okay, in its first year, can conceivably take away from my audience? Is he worried?
It's a possibility, because you got to understand that the NBA right now it's in a kind of a tough spot right now. I have a lot of NBA guests on. And, I had Chris Krause on from hoopsrumors.com just about a couple weeks ago. We talked about it. I said, what do you give this first half? And usually I hear an A-, A+. So I hear a B+, and I sit back and go, okay, the Western Conference is worth my time. The Bucks are worth my time. But talking about other teams, it just becomes, it's like, okay, big deal. So what? We're just all looking for clicks right now. And it's not good also because the All-Star game, and I heard about this today, Chicago is supposed to get several inches of snow. Their temperatures are supposed to drop in the teens, and you're in Chicago. And I understand it's the third media market. It's where, it's the house that Jordan built. I get it. But there is no excitement right now for this, because when you see a league like the NBA scurrying around trying to figure out new ideas to their All-Star game, that is an issue. They changed up the game. They changed up the slam dunk contest. They changed up the 3-point contest. They are understanding right now that they are starting to go in that realm of the NFL Pro Bowl planning. And that is not good for the NBA. And also, outside of ESPN and TNT, not many people are talking about the NBA. I still like it, but I don't love it, and it's not appointed viewing. And it also doesn't help that college basketball is not getting any interest right now. I understand we got a story in San Diego State. Duke is still Duke, but North Carolina not being in the tournament this year is going to be a huge loss because that's one of the major blue bloods. We don't know how good Kansas is. We don't know if Baylor is the number one team right now. So it kind of feels like that the game of basketball in college and pro, it's kind of at a crossroads right now. And when they hit that fork in the road, they just have to figure out, okay, which way are we going to go with this? Are we going to start thinking smaller? Or are we going to go bigger? Because at the end of the season, there is something called the salary cap. And if the facts were right, that the report that came out a couple weeks ago about the NBA possibly having to bring down their salary cap next year, it will be interesting to see where the NBA goes.
Well, here, let's take it to another level. Jake, since you want to bring that up, okay, and I look at the NBA when the Houston Rockets just made a giant trade so that they can play small ball. So you know what I consider that version, Jake, okay, in football terms? They're looking to play the run and shoot in the NBA without a true legitimate center. Once upon a time, the run and shoot offense was engineered by Miles Davis, June Jones, and guess what? We get to do it in the NBA, okay? So meanwhile, what do you think happens after that? They get blown out in Phoenix because of the run and shoot, okay, which I can think of a lot of things I'd call it, but I don't want to get expletive off the air, okay, because that's really what it comes down to. Mike D'Antoni, let's just use the run and shoot in the NBA so that they can run me out of town at the end of the year. And wondering what their expectations were that let's just trade Chris Paul over to Oklahoma City, rah, 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 Paul's in Sooner territory, so let's bring on Russell Westbrook and James Harden, who, by the way, couldn't put it together in Oklahoma City and try to recreate finals magic. No. So we have the run and shoot invading the NBA. Meanwhile, these guys are shooting their stinking mouths. And now the new guy in town, the XFL, which doesn't have he hate me, okay, instead it's he hate the NBA, okay. And then what do you have? You have a disaster waiting to happen. Now, I won't go taking it as far as tape delay, although you never know. Okay, but David Stern won't be walking through those doors to bail the league out. Okay, and you had the biggest kiss, you know what, and Adam Silver leading the way. He's not bold enough to get rid of Donald Sterling, okay, because he was able to do that and made a lot of friends. But in the end, you're not making any friends if that salary cap is going down and you're scrambling for results, okay? You ever play paintball before?
Once or twice, yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, I got news for you. I once played it, and thankfully I had goggles, and I got shot right in the eye, and that was the end of that. So does he have any kind of paint? Okay, they could paint a better picture about where this league is going, because nobody gives a damn about the All-Star game, and the ratings are going down. It's that thing called a domino effect. You ever heard of that? Okay, let's play dominoes and see where all the dominoes are going to drop about what's going on. We have guys like Greg Popovich. We have Steve Kerr bad-mouthing politics. And we have Stan, I'm going to get exiled from the Van Gundy, who will get exiled from the NBA, who went ahead and contributed to the onslaught about who's doing what. And what teams don't want to visit the president. I don't care whether you like the president or not. If you have an invite to the White House, it's always good to go ahead and take the invite to the White House, bite your tongue. But these guys are the biggest advocates about not going there. So, I don't want to turn this into a political thing, and I'm trying to avoid it to the best of my ability. But tell me one reason why I should like the NBA, and give me one reason why I shouldn't think the XFL is off to a good start, knowing full well that Vince McMahon ate humble pie, and he's determined not to eat crow this time around, since he has a $500 million investment that he's committed over 3 years. The floor is yours, Jake.
Well, the best marketing ploy that Vince McMahon did was he was not appearing at any of the games this weekend. He didn't go out on the field. He didn't have Arnold Schwarzenegger out there and all the, sexy cheerleaders that he had in 2001. He just let the XFL breathe, let Oliver Luck run it so he can keep running WWE, and then go from there. And another thing is that, like I said, we just need to see some growth. We need to see some interest to, okay, why do I want to turn on the XFL next week? Well, I want to see that kickoff again. That was one thing. There was so much new rules that came out and so many different aspects that really made the fan feel like they were part of the game. And this is one of the things that the NFL has been stressing to themselves. When can we start putting out these ideas? And the XFL already said, too late. We already have an idea for you. It is going to take time, but I also feel like this could help the NFL create a feeder system, a minor league system, where they could take players like that, sign them to minimum contracts, and let them play out their dream and, go get what they want to get. And that is what has been needed, because a lot of people keep saying that the college football talent pool is starting to dry up a little bit here and there, and not many schools are getting the attention that they should be getting. So this is a good opportunity for them to have that minor league system, to create the revenue, the profit, and have that high-quality television on there with Fox and ESPN. And if they can help that, then we can push into another season. If it works the second season, then they go into a third season. With the NBA, it's a different story. They are right now getting closer, as I said before. They're getting closer to that fork in the road. It doesn't matter how strong the social media is. Look at the ratings. My friend Chris is a reporter for the Washington Wizards. He's a contributor. He told me himself that the NBA, that the ratings in Washington are 30th. The 30th. There are teams, outside the Pelicans, if you have a small market, nobody is watching. The only fan bases right now that actually are give a damn are the Bucks, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Raptors, the Pacers. I'm only at 6 teams, and now I'm coming to the point where I'm starting to lose track, because outside of those 6 teams, I don't know who the heck to believe. Even Dan Patrick brought up a great point today. No one is talking about the Toronto Raptors. They are on a 15-game winning streak right now. 15 games. They should be able to have some kind of national attention. They're just not getting it. So there's just a lot of differences. One of the top stories today was Joel Embiid is being booed by the Sixers. Tony Kornheiser said it best. I don't want to hear. I don't want to talk. I don't care about Joel Embiid. And once the fan base comes to that point and says, we don't care either, then maybe the NBA can start getting away from these social media beefs and start focusing on beefs that happen on the court, not off the court.
Well, it's funny how you talk about Joel Embiid. I actually heard what Tony Kornheiser said, and he nailed it. What has Joel Embiid done on the court that would make me worthy that he's accomplished anything? My point. Oh, I guess he's collected a good paycheck because he's been hurt. Okay, but until you can go out there and prove to me that your play speaks for itself on the court. Now you got Brett Brown on the hot seat out there. Great. Here's a guy that did all that tanking for him, but because you have a prima donna that can't stay off the injured list, making too many comments that, you ever heard of a saying, thou shalt keep my foot on the ground, not thou mouth? Well, I don't think anyone in the NBA has figured that one out yet, and I'm not so sure, I'm living, before I take my concrete nap that they ever will.
And that's another thing, too, is that Brent Brown, if he gets fired by the 76ers, he will have a job in the next 2 weeks.
Snap your finger, Jake. That's how fast he'll get hired.
Yes, well, there will be Houston, there will be Oklahoma City, maybe Chicago might take a chance at him. There is going to be at least 5 to 7 teams that are going to be looking for a coach, and if you got a guy in Brent Brown like that, you go for him. So if the Sixers are going down this road, well, what else can I say? They're one of the worst road teams in the NBA. They're one of the best home teams. They're too inconsistent. It's like watching Wall Street Money Never Sleeps with these guys. There's just no consistency to it, and it starts to annoy fans. And like I said, there are 2 big games tonight, and I don't care. I'm just sitting here, I'm like, I don't care.
Oh, I would rather be broadcasting with you than watching those clowns. If I want to, and I am, okay, so if I want to go ahead and see a circus, I'll go to the Shrine Circus. Is it still around? The Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus? Or I have another clown show that I actually advertise that you're going to get a kick out of, called the Rick Curdy, Louis Eddie Weiss Show, where we have Mr. Analytics versus Mr. non-analytics, and I've actually found some nice entertainment value in watching these two guys. So I'm looking for anything that has good entertainment value inside and outside of the network, so that you have two guys like myself and you who will be meeting in a few weeks, by the way, okay, discussing more ways that we can bring more clowns on the show and have more chemistry within the organization. But seriously speaking, okay, Jake, I am sick and tired of the NBA, and I am hoping and praying, okay, that the XFL goes ahead and puts a dent in the NBA, even though I doubt it will get to tape delay. Now, if you see some of my education from the University of South Florida, Broward Community College, and that creative writing background to complement 41 years worth of journalism, and if that doesn't work, how about the creative writing skills that I created before you were long brought on this planet back at Lakeland High School in Michigan? My goodness, did you get any of that, Jake?
I got it. I'm clear.
Oh, my goodness, aren't we having fun? So, XFL versus the NBA. You know what? We should have Kornheiser and Wilbon say, who do you got?
I don't know about that. They might look at us and think we're like the Rockets. We're playing too much small ball.
I don't know. I like I call me the bad boys after all I covered them. And if you want proof of that, my man, look inside my place, and you'll see I have a piece of the floor that my friend Bill Wickett gave me a long time ago when I covered the team on a regular basis when the NBA was a real league, not a real joke.
Yeah, like I said, I miss the days of the 90s and the early 2000s, you know.
Well, you know, Jake, if I really wanted to play patty cake bakers, man, you definitely don't want to hear me sing, because I'd be worse than a Memorex class.
You're making my night, Scott.
Oh, I am. Don't worry, Jake. We got many more of these. Don't worry.
Oh, yeah. Looking forward to it.
Any final thoughts here before I go out there and ask you to promote everything about Jake Ronholt that everybody out there should know about? Go on, floor's yours.
It's the dead zone of sports right now, and like I said, there's a weird, wacky new playoff system that Major League Baseball is looking at right now, but we'll jump into that on the next show.
All right, well, meanwhile, I want to thank everybody here on tonight's edition of the Sports Exchange. My co-host has been Candy Ebling, Rick Curtis led off, followed by Mel Farr, David Levin, Bill Winters, and last but not least, Jake Ronholt. Jake, enjoy what you bring to the program, and I look forward to having you more involved as the Sports Exchange continues to expand, because the Sports Exchange will be going to 3 days very soon, and we're going to be revising the lineup. So meanwhile, Jake, it's been a pleasure having you on the program, and I look forward to the next time we can talk about anything that goes out there and makes us all completely crazy. But great job tonight, Jake. Appreciate you very much, okay?
Looking forward to it, Scott, and you two have a great night, and I'm just glad to be part of the Sports Exchange.
Well, we're glad to have you, more than you'll ever know, but at least you know. So, all right, thanks very much, Jake.
All right, thanks.